Chapter 636. As the sound of Zai Qiu's voice faded, a cold light flickered in Qin Wentian's eyes. There was no need to doubt that Zai Qiu's status in the royal sacred sect was extraordinary. Although Xia Sheng was the core of the crowd, the person who obtained the imprint earlier was none other than Zai Qiu. Not only that, no one dared to have any thoughts of snatching it away. Just follow the order? Qin Wentian laughed. From the moment Zai Qiu obtained the imprint earlier, he already knew that there was no need for the others to interfere. Following the order and placing himself in the most dangerous situation, Qin Wentian wasn't someone who would be so selfless. We have to make things clear. If not, wouldn't our deaths be in vain? Qin Wentian spoke. Many fell silent. This was also what they wanted to ask. Although the experts of the royal sacred sect promised that they could share the immortal art with them, could they really do so? What about the immortal treasures? That was something that couldn't be shared. Earlier when Zai Qiu snatched the imprint, he didn't ask for their opinion. Although they didn't dare to say it out loud, it didn't mean that they didn't have any thoughts. Qin Wentian. Zai Qiu stared at Qin Wentian as a cold smile flickered in his eyes. I've long heard of you. You are very famous and your talent is high, but you have to understand that this place is controlled by the royal sacred sect. Here, you better put down your arrogance. You don't have the qualifications to be impudent here. If you don't wish to participate, you can scram now. It's not that I wanted to come, it's the royal sacred sect who invited me. Qin Wentian stared straight at Zai Qiu as he coldly spoke. If you don't want me to participate, I don't mind. But please keep your mouth clean. Even if you are a core disciple of the royal sacred sect, I have nothing to do with you. A light laughter rang out. It was none other than that female from the Grand Shang faction. She didn't forget to throw stones at Qin Wentian when he was down. How arrogant, my royal sacred sect invited him here. Zai Qiu, what a great uncle you are. This woman knew what kind of person Zai Qiu was. Naturally, she would not miss this opportunity to deepen the conflict between Zai Qiu and Qin Wentian. Zai Qiu's countenance had already turned heavy. Just when he wanted to speak, Qin quietly interjected, "We have to make things clear. The majority of the people here are disciples of the royal sacred sect. I have no objections if we all face danger together. But if we only face danger with no benefits at all, what's the point of this?" Qin's words still carried some weight. He was a disciple of the battle sword faction of the royal sacred sect and was extremely powerful. His statement indicated that he was standing on the side of Qin Wentian. Qin, in your opinion, what should we do? Besides, Zai Qiu was a young man with a face filled with arrogance. His age seemed to be even younger than Zai Qiu, and he was none other than Sun Qing from the core faction of the royal sacred sect. His strength was also extremely powerful, and he was a fellow apprentice brother of Xia Sheng and Zai Qiu. This Qin was a disciple of the battle sword faction of the royal sacred sect. The disciples of this faction were the most arrogant and difficult to tame. They wouldn't listen to their orders, and right now when Sun Qing saw Qin refuting Zai Qiu, unhappiness could be seen on his face. If we obtain an immortal art, it shall be controlled by the person who obtained it. Once someone obtains it, no one else is allowed to snatch it away. Since it's an immortal art, we shall hand it over to Senior Ji after we obtain it. If we obtain an immortal treasure, it shall be handed over to Senior Ji by the person who obtained it. Even if we hand it over to Senior Ji, we have to make things clear. Only then would the sect be able to reward or punish the person who obtained it. Qin's voice was extremely calm, neither servile nor overbearing. Impudent, Senior Ji has already instructed us to listen to Senior Xia Sheng's orders. Qin, are you deaf? Sun Qing berated. I'm just stating the facts. Since everyone has different opinions, it's not too much for me to voice out my opinion. Naturally, if all the fellow apprentices are willing to listen to Xia Sheng's orders, I will naturally comply as well. Qin faintly spoke. Sun Qing turned his gaze onto the others, but momentarily, the gazes of the crowd shifted away from him. Evidently, they all silently agreed to Qin's words. Since someone was willing to take the lead, they were more than happy to sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. Zai Qiu's eyes flashed with a cold light. After which, he stared at Qin and stated, Fine, we shall do as you say. However, in order to prevent the various fellow apprentices from fighting over the treasures, the rules shall be changed slightly. Whoever is the last to kill the tomb immortal shall obtain the treasures temporarily. Does anyone have any objections? We're willing to listen to Zai Chio's opinion. Since Zai Chio has spoken, we will naturally do as you say. The crowd all agreed, causing Zai Chio's lips to curl up in a cold smile. However, those who stood in their positions pretended not to see it. Enough, we're all fellow apprentices of the same sect. There's no need to bicker over such a minor matter. Since Zai Chio has already spoken, let's all do our best. Naturally, the immortal treasures won't be lacking. At this moment, Xia Sheng spoke. Qin and Zai Chio's suggestion can also encourage everyone to put in more effort in killing the tomb immortal. Next, I hope that everyone can be united as one. If not, everyone has already seen how dangerous it is. That's only natural. We're all fellow apprentices of the same sect. I hope that no one will encounter any danger. Qin nodded, radiating a righteous aura. Siko glanced at Qin, his face filled with disdain. He understood Quin's character very well. Quin's personality was straightforward and magnanimous. However, these people from the core faction most probably wouldn't have the same thoughts as him. Let's do it. Xia Sheng spoke. Instantly, divine inscriptions flashed as a raging wind gusted. Qin, Siko, Qin Wendian and Wu Teng stood at the head of the golden rock. At this moment, Xia Sheng, who was standing in the direction of the rock's talons, made a grabbing motion in the air. With a thunderous boom, the sword floating above the tomb shattered apart as a terrifying sword intent gushed forth, exuding an aura that seemed to originate from the primordial era. The biting cold wind whistled, piercing the bodies of everyone. A white-robed silhouette appeared above the tomb. A look of confusion flashed in his eyes as he stared at the crowd before him. He stretched out his hand, as though he was sensing his own strength. Why are you all so weak? A hoarse voice rang out, filled with a sense of humiliation. His eyes abruptly turned sharp, and in an instant, everyone felt as though they were being penetrated by sword light. Are you all the ones who buried me here? This person slowly walked forward, his sword chi towering up into the sky. At this instant, everyone felt a surge of sword might enveloping them. Attack! Xia Sheng spoke. Qin nodded. Divine inscriptions glowed with resplendent light as the rock screeched. Sword chi lacerated the heavens as a myriad of silhouettes manifested in the form of a soaring immortal sword. Why are you all so weak? That white-robed silhouette pointed his finger at the air, causing the sword light to converge and revolve frenziedly. Bzz. A raging wind gusted, Zai Chio and the other experts in the formation feather positions acted. The gigantic shadow of the golden rock moved, drifting forward as a corrosive palm imprint blasted out, aiming for the white-robed silhouette. The palm of the white-robed silhouette sliced through the air, slashing apart everything. The sharp talons of the golden rock slashed out, while Xia Sheng and the other experts in the formation feather positions unleashed an indomitable vibrational fist light that could destroy everything. That white-robed silhouette drew in a deep breath as he soared up into the air. Boundless sword light gathered around him as he howled in rage. Step by step, he stared at the gigantic shadow of the golden rock as his sword chi rampaged through the heavens and earth, lacerating everything in its path. Rumble! The wings of the golden rock flapped as the shadow of the golden rock rushed out. The entire golden rock formation seemed to be floating in the air. Everyone was in their respective positions, frenziedly attacking. Qin Wenyan and the other three experts directly appeared in front of the white-robed silhouette. He's doing this on purpose. The movements of the golden rock are controlled by the formation feather. Qin Wenyan spoke to Qin and the others. The left wing was controlled by Zai Chio while the right wing was controlled by Sun Qin. Do your best to it. Qin calmly spoke. Thousand slaughters sword art. As the sound of his voice faded, sword chi gushed forth as tens of thousands of beams of sword light blasted out. Borrowing the might of the formation, their strength was even more shocking. Saiku also attacked, but his sword technique was different from Qin's. Both of them were heaven-chosen from the battle sword faction in the royal sacred sect. Quin's swordsmanship was straight, while Saiku's swordsmanship was unconventional. The evil dragon sword art, thunder-defying slash, each of his sword techniques were extremely crafty and dangerous. Not only for them, everyone else also launched their frenzied attacks. That white-robed silhouette stood in front of the gigantic golden rock. That seemingly insignificant silhouette erupted forth with an overwhelming amount of energy. Each of his sword strikes contained a sure kill might, yet more than half of his strength was negated by the shadow of the golden rock. But even so, Qin Wenyan still felt a sense of danger. Press forward, let him be in the center of the golden rock. Wouldn't it be easier to kill him then? Qin Wenyan spoke. Momentarily, his wings flapped as the golden rock pressed forward, appearing in the airspace above the white-robed silhouette. Countless beams of light blasted downwards, yet the white-robed silhouette didn't know how to dodge. Right now, he was in a daze and only wanted to kill. Close up, everyone! Xia Sheng roared. Momentarily, the golden rock's wings closed as the golden rock pressed downwards, burying the white-robed silhouette beneath it. Everyone simultaneously unleashed their strongest attacks. The eyes of the white-robed silhouette gleamed with a towering sword light. He abandoned his sword and stood upright, closing his eyes as he pressed his palms into the air. His entire person erupted with a boundless killing intent as an intense light blotted out the skies, blinding the eyes of everyone. The sword chi shredded apart the formation as terrifying rumbling sounds echoed out. The destructive might of the formation tore apart everything, causing the formation to collapse. Everyone was forced back, causing dust to billow up into the air. The white-robed silhouette stood there, bathed in blood, exuding a feeling of a hero past his prime. A top-tier fourth-ranked support formation, and tens of heavenly dipper sovereigns who have comprehended true intent were actually forced to such an extent. The hearts of the crowd trembled. The white-robed silhouette turned his gaze over and walked towards the direction of Qin and Qin Wenyan as he coldly spoke, "Your swords are too weak." As the sound of his voice faded, he pointed his finger in the air. Instantly, a supreme sword might controlled everything. Qin and Saiku wielded their swords, yet they felt their sword intents being controlled by someone else. The white-robed silhouette was covered in blood, yet he still continued walking forward step by step. "Qin, Saiku, the two of you block the attacks. The others should launch a pincer attack to kill him." Zai Qiu spoke, his words causing the expressions of everyone to freeze. This Zai Qiu was so ruthless, telling Qin and the others to face the white-robed silhouette head-on. Even if they managed to kill the white-robed silhouette in the end, the price they had to pay would be the sacrifice of Qin and the others. Qin Wenyan stared at the white-robed silhouette, activating the true intent of his dreams. However, that formless sword chi seemed to be able to tear the white-robed silhouette apart. Bzz. Numerous water screens appeared as sound waves gushed forth, whistling towards the white-robed silhouette. It was Fan Miaoyu who acted. "Let's go." Qin and the other three instantly dodged to the two sides. A beam of sword chi shot out like a rainbow, slicing apart the sound waves. The white-robed silhouette appeared once more. Although he was heavily injured, the sword might he unleashed wasn't affected at all. He turned and stared at Fan Miaoyu. Damn. Sun Qing was extremely depressed. His plan was actually foiled. The killing move he had prepared earlier erupted forth as lava gushed towards the white-robed silhouette. Pucci! A beam of sword light slashed the lava apart. At the same time, the lava-like flames enveloped the white-robed silhouette, instantly incinerating him. This scene caused Sun Qing to be extremely excited. Kill him, seems like he can't hold on any longer. As the sound of his voice faded, he discovered a pair of incomparably cold eyes staring at him. After which, the white-robed silhouette stepped out step by step. Sun Qing and Fan Miaoyu weren't far away from each other, yet at the same time, they discovered that they were being locked onto. With every step the white-robed silhouette took, they felt that they were one step closer to death. That fiery figure wanted to kill them even if he had to die. Bzz. The white-robed silhouette rushed out, akin to a beam of supreme sword light. Quinn, save Sun Qing. Zai Qiu roared. Quinn and the other three took a detour, nearing Fan Miaoyu. They were the ones closest to Sun Qing and Fan Miaoyu. It was too late. The white-robed silhouette transformed into two beams of supreme sword light, shooting towards Sun Qing and Fan Miaoyu respectively. Die! Qin Wenyin roared as he blasted out with his palms. Quinn also moved, unleashing a soaring immortal sword. Pang! The sword light slashed towards Fan Miaoyu, colliding with an illusory palm imprint. After which, Quinn rushed over and unleashed the might of the soaring immortal sword, forcibly blocking that attack. Both he and Fan Miaoyu were flung backwards from the impact, but Sun Qing wasn't so lucky. The other beam of sword light pierced through his throat despite his all-out attack. Chapter 637. Sun Jing. Xia Sheng and Zai Qiu both cried out in alarm, their faces instantly turning pale. Sun Qing was the junior apprentice brother of the two of them, and the relationship between the three of them had always been very good. Xia Sheng and Zai Qiu both treated Sun Qing like an elder brother, and Sun Qing's talent was also very strong. In the future, it was very likely that he would have great achievements in the core faction. He was young and full of vigor, so Xia Sheng would tolerate him. As for Zai Qiu, Sun Qing had always listened to him, and the three of them were like brothers. But now, Sun Qing was dead. He had died right in front of them. Why not save him? A terrifying killing intent flashed on Zai Qiu's face as he stared at Quinn and Qin Wenyin. They had the chance to save Sun Qing, yet they chose to save Fan Miaoyu instead. Qin Wenyin furrowed his brows. Earlier, when they were being attacked, Zai Qiu had shouted for them to withstand the attacks by themselves before launching a pincer attack. Only Fan Miaoyu had acted to help them. Even if Qin Wenyin didn't care about his sinister intentions, Fan Miaoyu and Sun Jing were in danger together. It was only logical that they would choose to save Fan Miaoyu. I regret Sun Qing's death, but in this situation, we can only save one person, Quinn calmly replied. Didn't I say to save Sun Qing? A cold light flashed in Zai Qiu's eyes. Yes, but at that time, it was already too late to consider. We could only rely on our instincts to attack. Quinn's voice didn't contain the slightest hint of anger. Zai Qiu's countenance turned extremely dark. But at this moment, that strand of sword light in the distance actually fused together with the ancient sword that was floating above the tomb not long ago, bringing with it a towering sword qi as it whistled over. In the vast land, the sword qi swept over, causing the sounds of rage to echo out as dust rose into the air. One after another, ancient tombs began to explode, each of them emanating an aura that originated from the primordial era. Zai Qiu! Xia Sheng shouted. His countenance was extremely unsightly to behold. The gazes of the crowd turned over, only to see the supreme geniuses appearing on top of the destroyed tombs. They stood there staring at the sky, their eyes filled with confusion. After which, towering amounts of rage engulfed the heavens and earth as they roared. It's over! Everyone's faces paled, they could feel their hearts pounding. Just a single buried immortal was already inconceivably powerful. Now, the ancient tombs were exploding one after another, causing many buried immortals to appear. How were they supposed to contend against them? Run! Everyone had the same thought. Right now, they could only run. Scatter and escape, or we'll all be caught in one fell swoop. Xia Sheng roared. From afar, a silhouette had already appeared. The experts of the various sects instantly dispersed, fleeing in different directions. Qin Wenyin, Saiku, Quinn, Wu Teng, Fan Miaoyu, and the others all sprinted towards the direction of the passageway. Not only them, many others were also making detours in the same direction, preparing to leave. A terrifying gust of wind howled in the void. A shadow streaked across the sky. In the blink of an eye, a figure dressed in a green robe stood there with his hands behind his back at the exit. The power wrapped around his body was like an ancient aura. We can't get out. Saiku made a prompt decision and fled to the side alone. The strength of these buried immortals were all abnormally strong. Even if all of them worked together, they might not be able to move them. Since the exit had been blocked, it was destined to be a dead end. There are quite a few buried immortals. If we scatter and escape, our chances of survival will be higher, Quinn said in a low voice. Qin Wendian nodded slightly. Everyone take care. Take care. Wu Ting nodded. After which, the few of them scattered and fled in different directions. Unleashing the fiend transformation art, Qin Wendian actually transformed into a golden-winged great rock. His body arced through the air in a beautiful arc, whistling through the air like a golden beam of light. Imichem? At this moment, a figure below inclined his head, staring in the direction of Qin Wendian. His eyes gleamed with a demonic light as a pair of wings unfurled from his back, speeding towards Qin Wendian with lightning speed. Qin Wendian's speed was already extremely fast. However, the speed of this person was even faster. The two of them, one in front and one behind, streaked through the skies, traveling an unknown distance in the blink of an eye. Qin Wendian soon discovered that he was being targeted. His countenance grew extremely unsightly to behold. He continued speeding through the air for a few moments before he halted and descended to the ground, transforming back into his human form. Turning around, he stared at the figure that was chasing after him. It was a gray-robed man with a demonic countenance. This person floated in the air, staring at Qin Wendian with a blank look in his eyes. Senior, Qin Wendian called out. However, the gray-robed man flapped his wings as a gray-robed figure sped towards him. Qin Wendian's blood surged as he lifted his palms in anger. His palms glowed with runic light as he executed the star-seizing palm imprint. However, the gray-robed man casually lifted his palms as a resplendent treasure light shone from his palms. He resembled an immortal bird that shot out in anger. With a thunderous boom, Qin Wendian's palm imprint was smashed into smithereens. Qin Wendian coughed out a mouthful of blood as his aura fluctuated unsteadily. Just when he wanted to stand up, the sound of wind drifted over. The gray-robed man had already appeared before him, lowering his head to stare at him. Who are you and who am I? The gray-robed man spoke, his voice sounding extremely demonic. His countenance was like lightning, exuding a sense of terror. This junior is Qin Wendian. I have no idea who senior is. Qin Wendian replied. The strength of this person was so strong that it caused fear in the hearts of others. In that case, why are you here? Why is my cultivation base sealed? The robes of the gray-robed man fluttered in the wind. There was a look of confusion in his eyes. The sharpness of his demonic eyes seemed to be able to see through Qin Wendian. I only know that this place seems to be a burial ground for immortals. I'm currently in an immortal palace. Qin Wendian replied. Burial of immortals, burial of immortals. The gray-robed man mumbled. He felt a splitting headache. He inclined his head and stared at the sky. Burial of immortals. Why does it sound so familiar? Who are these immortals? Why did they seal me under a tomb? His voice gradually grew louder as a raging wind gusted by. Demonic chi gushed forth from him as he flapped his wings and soared up into the sky. He was like a bolt of lightning as a towering tyrannical aura radiated from him. It was unknown how many years they had been buried under a tomb. No wonder these people were filled with hatred and killing intent after they came out. Qin Wendian's entire body was drenched in sweat as he sighed in his heart. Compared to these buried immortals, the so-called unrivaled experts in Heavenly Dipper weren't even worthy of a mention. After consuming a medicinal pill, Qin Wendian continued on his way. Numerous ancient tombs could be seen everywhere. Qin Wendian saw a sword tomb and walked over to it. He could sense the sword might exuding from the tomb as he closed his eyes in meditation. After a long time, he stood up and continued on his way. Occasionally, he would come across an ancient tomb and would sit before it to sense the aura exuding from it. Time slowly flowed by. He has already been here for over a month. This desolate land was boundlessly vast. It was unknown how vast it was. There seemed to be no end to it. That voice he heard before wasn't just saying it to scare him. Burial of immortals, burial of immortals. Millions and millions of immortals and devils were buried here. That supreme existence who buried immortals, did he really do so to nurture his successor? If one wanted to become the successor of this immortal palace, what sort of talent must one have? That demonic and tyrannical voice from the void, where did it originate from? Who was the owner of that voice? Him? At this moment, Qin Wendian sensed someone staring at him. He then coldly spoke, "Come out." As the sound of his voice faded, a silhouette appeared behind an ancient tomb, staring at Qin Wendian, who was sitting cross-legged before it. This person was short and muscular, and was none other than the leader of the Violet Thunder sect, Tu Lung. Tu Lung stared at Qin Wendian, his eyes gleaming with coldness. He slowly walked towards Qin Wendian, yet he gave Qin Wendian a sense of danger. "Brother Wendian, why are you here as well?" Tu Lung narrowed his eyes as he smiled. It was as though he was very familiar with Qin Wendian. "What's the matter?" Qin Wendian indifferently asked. "I heard that you have many trump cards up your sleeves. In the immortal martial realm, you even obtained some extremely powerful innate techniques. This immortal palace is filled with danger, and Brother Wendian might die at any moment. Why don't you impart them to me?" Tu Lung coldly laughed as he walked towards Qin Wendian. At this moment, Qin Wendian had already stood up. He faintly spoke, "Is that so? How about I impart them to you now?" As he spoke, the blood in Qin Wendian's body seethed as his countenance turned demonic. Astral light circulated around him, incomparably resplendent. "Sure, I'm coming to collect them." Tu Lung's silhouette flickered as blood-colored lightning coiled around him, exuding a terrifying sense of danger as well as a fearsome destructive might. Boom! Tu Lung's palms blasted out as bolts of blood-colored lightning arced through the skies, directly blasting towards Qin Wendian's body. Instantly, Qin Wendian only felt a blood-colored calamity descending upon him. Every strand of lightning that blasted into his body caused Qin Wendian's blood to go numb as he felt his entire body becoming immobile. Bzz! Qin Wendian abruptly turned. With a flap of his wings, he transformed into a bolt of lightning as he sped away. "Hey, Brother Qin, why are you in such a hurry to leave?" Tu Lung stepped out, and with every step he took, Qin Wendian felt his entire body shuddering as an unparalleled pressure bore down on him. Tu Lung had comprehended 4 types of true intents. You won't be able to escape. Tu Lung's speed was similarly fast. Every step he took caused the heavens and earth to tremble. Qin Wendian only felt the blood-colored lightning gushing into his body, wanting to paralyze his blood vessels. At this moment, a towering sword qi gushed forth from Qin Wendian, causing Tu Lung to furrow his brows. After which, he only saw Qin Wendian abruptly turning and dashing towards him with lightning speed. Similarly, Tu Lung stepped out in the air, and with every step he took, a supreme sword might gushed forth, wanting to kill Tu Lung's heart. Tu Lung's countenance changed. He stepped out in the air as his terrifying true intent of great earth erupted forth, wanting to crush Qin Wendian. The two of them walked towards each other. True intent of sword, you actually comprehended 3 types of true intents. Tu Lung stared at Qin Wendian as the blood-colored lightning energy radiating from him blotted out the sun, illuminating the entire space. Die! Tu Lung roared in rage as the blood-colored lightning bolts blasted forth. Qin Wendian similarly roared as his sword hummed. Sword light swept out, lacerating Tu Lung's condensed armor. The two of them continued rushing towards each other, instantly colliding into each other. Sword imprint divine energy gathered in his palms as Qin Wendian's body expanded in size. Even his robes were shredded apart, yet his entire body was covered in a layer of armor. Numerous silhouettes appeared as his sword slashed down. Tu Lung's body expanded under the might of the lightning. His entire person was bathed in blood-colored lightning as he blasted out explosively, causing the blood in Qin Wendian's body to feel as though it was on the verge of collapsing. What a powerful attack! Qin Wendian felt as though the blood in his body was about to explode. However, the demonic blood in his body roared even more violently as the shadow of a demon king could be seen within. The aura from him grew increasingly violent. Boom, boom, boom. The two of them clashed in close-range combat. The divine energy in Qin Wentian's body seethed as he erupted forth with all his might. The auras of the two of them fluctuated wildly as blood seeped out from the corners of Qin Wentian's mouth. But even so, terrifying rumbling sounds rang out unceasingly as a towering demonic might engulfed the entire space. "Are you going to die or not?" Tu Lung icily spoke. The boundless blood-colored lightning seemed as though it wanted to shatter everything in Qin Wentian's body. Qin Wentian drew in a deep breath as blood flowed unceasingly from his wounds. A demonic light gleamed in his eyes as he stared at Tu Lung. "Thank you for this battle." As the sound of his voice faded, an even more violent demonic qi gushed forth, shaking the heavens and earth. A blood-colored light engulfed the entire space. Tu Lung's countenance turned incredibly unsightly as he explosively retreated. The true intent of the mandate of demons, Qin Wentian had comprehended 4 different true intents. Not only that, his aura was also soaring upwards. "Sir, where do you think you are going?" A ghostly voice drifted over. Tu Lung turned his head, only to see a silhouette he had never seen before. He was so frightened that his guts were about to shatter. Was this a buried immortal? In this place, as long as it was someone he had never seen before, Tu Lung would naturally assume that they were buried immortals. However, this person in front of him wasn't. Chapter 638. Tu Lung turned and moved in the direction of Qin Wentian. Compared to Qin Wentian, the buried immortals were simply too dangerous. Tu Lung had no way to contend against them. "Let's join forces or both of us will die." Tu Lung stared at Qin Wentian. At this moment, the demonic qi from Qin Wentian gushed forth, as though a supreme demon king was awakening. His gaze was like a demon, staring at Tu Lung. His countenance was incomparably calm as he spoke. "Is that so? You will die, but I won't." "Are you crazy?" Tu Lung cursed. The figure behind him was getting closer, frightening Tu Lung so much that he felt his entire body turning cold. "He isn't crazy. Do you see clearly who I am?" A voice rang out from behind. Tu Lung turned sideways and was sandwiched in the middle. He glanced at the newcomer. "Who are you?" "I am him, and he is also me," the newcomer calmly replied. "Crazy, all of you are crazy." The blood-colored lightning around Tu Lung's body rumbled madly. He rushed towards Qin Wentian, the blood-colored lightning opening up a path for him. The entire space around him transformed into a blood-colored space, and with a thunderous boom, Qin Wentian's body seemed to explode. The blood-colored lightning penetrated through Qin Wentian's body, and a hole could be seen in Qin Wentian's body. However, Qin Wentian's eyes were still fixated on Tu Lung. Something's wrong. Tu Lung suddenly felt his entire body turning cold. He heard that Qin Wentian was proficient in the true intent of dreams. This was the true intent of dreams, able to cause people to unknowingly fall into a deep slumber. Boom! The terrifying lightning directly blasted into his body. Tu Lung felt pain all over his body as the dream shattered. His entire body was drenched in cold sweat. As expected, it was a dream. The Qin Wentian before him was completely fine, with no injuries at all, let alone the hole in his body. "I want you dead." Tu Lung rushed towards Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian simply stood there, smiling at Tu Lung, allowing Tu Lung's attack to land on his body. Under Tu Lung's shocked gaze, another large hole appeared on Qin Wentian's body. Staring at the smiling eyes of Qin Wentian, Tu Lung felt as though he was about to plunge into hell. "Qi!" A light sound rang out. Tu Lung completely woke up from his dream. His original body hadn't moved at all. At this moment, he lowered his head and stared at the sharp sword that pierced through his heart. That sharp sword was currently wreaking havoc in his body, shredding everything apart. He stared at Qin Wentian, who was in front of him, as a look of bewilderment appeared on his face. He also wanted to look at the person behind him, but he could no longer turn his body. Double dreamscape. How can your true meaning of dream be so strong? Tu Lung stared at Qin Wentian. He also had some understanding of the true meaning of dream. This true meaning was extremely marvelous, but it had its flaws as well. If not, wouldn't it be easy to kill someone if they were trapped in a dream? The flaw of the true meaning of dream was that in order to trap someone in a dream, one had to focus their mind and will. Bringing someone into one's dream was extremely taxing. At this moment, if the user of the true meaning of dream took the initiative to attack, the dreamscape would become unstable and flaws would easily appear. Unless the target was extremely weak, the user of the true meaning of dream wouldn't take the initiative to attack. Earlier, Tu Ling clearly felt that he had already left the dream. But why was he still in a dream? The first time you broke free from my dream, the moment you turned to look at him, you were already in his dream. The second time, that was my dream. I didn't move, but he could kill you. Qin Wendian calmly spoke. At this moment, Tu Ling felt a bone-chilling coldness in his heart. He couldn't even swallow his anger as he mumbled, "That was your avatar." Qin Wendian didn't say anything, nor did he deny it. Tu Ling's eyes flashed with regret and despair. After which, a malevolent smile flickered in his eyes. An opponent like you is truly too terrifying. However, you will definitely die. He will definitely not spare you. Pucci. Di Tian's sword trembled violently. Tu Ling's laughter abruptly stopped as his gaze turned sluggish. The person behind him was none other than Di Tian, an incarnation formed using the great Nirvana immortal art. His original body and his incarnation were almost the same, almost as demon-level characters. Qin Wendian had long made arrangements for his avatar. The great Nirvana immortal art allowed him to create a body that was completely different from ordinary people. During normal times, he would allow Di Tian to cultivate peacefully while his original body roamed the world. This way, his cultivation base would increase faster, and if his original body died outside, at the very least, he would still be alive. Di Tian would be Qin Wentian's shadow, a shadow that would rarely appear in Qin Wentian's life. Di Tian would only appear at crucial moments, just like in this immortal burial ground. Di Tian also wouldn't affect his life. Qin Wendian wouldn't allow the avatar created by the great Nirvana immortal art to disturb him. Di Tian would only be his weapon, a weapon hidden in the shadows. Not only that, Di Tian's future cultivation path would be different from Qin Wentian's. Only then would he be able to unleash his greatest potential, allowing Di Tian to grow together with his original body. Di Tian would become his ultimate killing weapon. After Di Tian took the treasures from Tu Ling's body, he sped away, not staying together with Qin Wendian. Qin Wendian also left this place, and very swiftly, the two of them found a place to cultivate as they took out Yuan meteor stones to cultivate. The astral energy in their bodies seethed frenziedly, cleansing their arterial pathways and acupoints, tempering their astral novas. Intense rumbling sounds rang out from their bodies, and in the short span of a day, both Qin Wendian and Di Tian broke through, stepping into the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper. Before this, they made use of the grand formation to fight against the buried immortal. The swordsman's swordsmanship caused Qin Wendian to have a deep comprehension, and after that, when he roamed the immortal burial grounds, he comprehended the true intent of sword. At the same time, his true intent of the mandate of demons was also on the verge of breaking through. Coincidentally, Tu Ling appeared and engaged in a violent battle, causing his blood to boil. Despite being injured, Qin Wendian also fought with all his might. The power of demons was just like this, violent, fearless, bloodthirsty, and at the end of the battle, Qin Wentian's true intent of the mandate of demons was born. The tyrannical true intent of the mandate of demons caused his bloodline to undergo a transformation, frenziedly cleansing his body, causing a chain reaction. His cultivation base actually showed signs of breaking through. This was also the reason why Tu Ling wanted to leave earlier. He could sense that Qin Wendian was already on the verge of breaking through. He knew that his own battle was being used by Qin Wendian, allowing Qin Wendian to succeed. Hence, the current Qin Wendian had already broken through to the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper, comprehending 4 types of true intents: force, dream sleep, demon, sword. His combat prowess wasn't merely a level stronger than before. If he appeared on the sacred battle platform again, he could easily insta-kill Lu Lan and Di Shi. His opponents basically had no way to resist. Even for an expert like Tu Ling, He had the confidence to suppress him. Next, what Qin Wenyan truly needed to pursue was the unrivaled realm in Heavenly Dipper. He wanted to be truly unrivaled in Heavenly Dipper. After seeing the combat prowess of the buried immortal, Qin Wenyan understood that even the current him was still very far away from that. The strength of the buried immortal was simply too terrifying. Even Tu Long couldn't withstand a single strike from him. After breaking through, Qin Wenyan and Di Tian didn't roam around aimlessly. Instead, they chose to stabilize their cultivation bases and familiarize themselves with the power of their true intents. Only then would they be able to use them more freely in combat. Over 10 days later, Qin Wenyan and Di Tian continued exploring the depths of this burial ground. There were millions and millions of ancient tombs here. It was as though there were countless of them. Right now, Qin Wenyan was already numb to it. He didn't dare to imagine how many immortals and devils were buried here. But he could be sure that this immortal palace shouldn't have been in the royal sacred region in the past. How could there be so many immortals in the royal sacred region? As they advanced through the desolate grounds, whenever Qin Wenyan felt a sense of enlightenment, he would sit down and cultivate. Today, Qin Wenyan finally saw the end of this desolate grounds. What appeared before Qin Wenyan's eyes was a screen of light that connected the heavens and earth. Beams of multicolored light cascaded down from the heavens, cutting off the void. In the middle of the screen of light, there seemed to be numerous doors of the void. Key! Qin Wenyan's countenance stiffened. A whistling sound rang out from afar, and an instant later, Di Tian appeared with a key in his hand. This key directly transformed into an illusory form and floated forward, piercing into one of the doors of the void. An instant later, a gap appeared. Qin Wenyan and Di Tian both trembled. The door of the void was opened. The key left behind by the Xia Emperor was truly useful. In that case, what secrets were hidden on the other side of the door of the void? A terrifying aura gushed forth from the other side of the door of the void, as though it originated from the primordial era. Qin Wenyan's eyes flashed with a hint of struggle. After which, he stared at Di Tian as a resolute light flickered in his eyes. Since I'm already here, wouldn't it be a pity if I don't enter? Qin Wenyan sighed in his heart. As the sound of his voice faded, he directly turned and departed without any hesitation. However, after he left, Di Tian's silhouette flickered as he stepped into the door of the void. A bright light flashed as the door of the void closed. The two spaces were separated once more. At this moment, Di Tian stood at the other side of the door of the void. The door of the void behind him was closed. He knew that he had no path of retreat. Di Tian was thinking that back then, the Xia Emperor actually didn't use this key. He didn't know how the Xia Emperor obtained this key. Maybe it was his strength, or maybe it was luck. Finally, there's someone else here. A hoarse voice rang out. Di Tian's countenance was as calm as ever. Since he already entered this place, no matter what he encountered, he would be able to stabilize his state of mind. Being able to come here and kill those buried immortals alone, he should have some strength, right? I wonder if we can obtain the inheritance of that old thief. If that's the case, we would have a chance to regain our freedom. Numerous voices rang out unceasingly. It was as though this place was too lonely. It had been too long since someone came here. The silent world suddenly became lively. Only by killing a buried immortal alone would one be qualified to enter this place? Di Tian's heart trembled. How powerful were the buried immortals? Being able to kill them alone meant that only those who were truly unrivaled in Heavenly Dipper would be qualified to enter this place. Old thief? Inheritance? These people should be filled with hatred towards the master of the immortal palace. Since they dared to call the master of the immortal palace an old thief, there was a very high possibility that he had already died. Di Tian swiftly deduced some useful information. He continued walking forward as the voices continued ringing out in his ears. Only at the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper? How can it be? Someone questioned. All of you stop dreaming. This old man has been here for 80,000 years. Although the number of people who could come here was extremely few, there were at least several hundred of them. Which one of them wasn't exuding magnificence through the generations? But in the end, weren't they all toyed to death by you guys and obtained the inheritance? I curse that old thief to never obtain a successor for his entire life. To think that the conditions are so harsh. Ha, you guys better be gentler. Don't kill this little fellow too early or it would be too boring. Someone cackled, treating D. Tion like a plaything. Is this a devil's nest? D. Tion felt extremely depressed. 80,000 years? There were actually people who stayed here for 80,000 years? How terrifying, they must have all gone crazy. Chapter 639. D. Tion continued walking forward step by step. This side of the Gate of the Void was filled with lush mountains and green rivers. Compared to the desolation on the other side, this side of the Gate of the Void seemed more like an ordinary world. Although the voices from earlier rang out in D. Tion's ears, they originated from far away. After walking for a long time, D. Tion finally saw a human silhouette. Not far away from him, there was a red-haired old man. His hair and beard were extremely disheveled and his eyes were very large. He stared at D. Tion, his gaze filled with a terrifying might. When D. Tion stared at those eyes, it was like he was looking at a world of flames, enveloping him within, causing his entire body to feel incomparably hot. Not good. D. Tion struggled free, his eyes regained their clarity. He stared at the red-haired old man as his heart trembled. This old man was also staring at him, but he didn't move. D. Tion discovered that the old man's body was tied to an incomparably gigantic ancient tree. This ancient tree seemed to be circulating with a mysterious runic energy that seeped into the old man's body, forcefully binding him there, causing him to be unable to move. "Senior, do you need Junior's help?" D. Tion asked. The red-haired old man started. He glanced at D. Tion in bewilderment before he grinned. "What an interesting little fellow. Why don't you give it a try?" D. Tion walked up as his sword chi towered up into the sky. He abruptly slashed towards the ancient tree that the old man was tied to. The incomparably sharp sword slashed through the vines, but it didn't even leave a mark on the tree. How sturdy! No wonder Senior is actually bound here. Bound? Do you think this is a tree? The red-haired old man glared at D. Tion. Ignorant. D. Tion felt somewhat awkward. Let's go ahead and take a look. The red-haired old man berated. D. Tion nodded and continued walking forward. He saw someone not far away who was being suppressed beneath a mountain. This mountain was filled with spiritual chi and the long hair of that person had already covered his face. He inclined his head and grinned at D. Tion. "It's been a long time since I've seen an outsider. How lonely." "Brat, be careful. The people here have all gone crazy. They will toy with you to death." A voice rang out in D. Tion's mind, causing him to start. After which, he turned his head back and stared at the red-haired old man with gratitude. D. Tion continued walking forward. He saw a lake with a long-haired maiden in it. She was extremely beautiful and her eyes were as deep as the ocean. When she glanced at D. Tion, her gaze was as cold as ice. She slowly walked forward, causing ripples to form on the surface of the lake. That maiden seemed to be unable to walk out of the lake. This kind of temperament is too perfect. D. Tion stared at the maiden in the lake. Although the countenance of this maiden couldn't be compared to Qing and Mo Qingqing, the aura she exuded was even more outstanding. She was like a true celestial maiden, yet her eyes were so dim and lifeless, as though she was a living corpse. This caused D. Tion's heart to tremble as he felt his entire body stiffening. They were originally immortals, yet they were reduced to such a state, trapped for 80,000 years. Who could understand this type of pain? He stepped onto the path of cultivation at the age of 16, pursuing the path of cultivation. How arduous was his journey? The road ahead was long, with no end in sight. If one day he became an immortal and was trapped in such a state, how much despair would he feel? As he thought of this, D. Tion's heart was deeply stirred. He stared deeply at the maiden in front of him, only to see her treating him like nothing. Turning his head, D. Tion returned to the red-haired old man and asked, "Senior, have your cultivation bases and bodies been sealed?" "Amichem?" The red-haired old man glanced at Tion as a surge of heat gushed forth. Yes, they've been sealed. How can we break the seal? Tion asked. Break the seal? All of a sudden, a loud laughter rang out. It was none other than the person who was trapped under the mountain. He laughed maniacally. You don't know the immensity of the heavens and earth. If you want to break the seal, you have to defeat all of us first. Blast your way through, and at the very end, you will be able to cultivate the abilities of that old thief. At that time, you can then talk about breaking the seal. Senior, is it really possible? Tion stared at the red-haired old man. The red-haired old man saw the sincerity in Tion's eyes. He then asked, Do you really want to help us break the seal? Tion calmly nodded. Sadly, Junior's strength is too weak. Why? The red-haired old man asked. Since you can come here as long as you obtain the inheritance, you can even control all of us, turning us into your strongest weapons. In that case, do you still want to break the seal? Tion's heart stirred, but he still smiled and shook his head. The path of cultivation is extremely difficult. Junior has been pursuing the path of cultivation, hoping that one day I can become an immortal, free and unfettered. Seniors, you are all already immortals. You should be free and unfettered in the world of mortals. Yet, Senior is restrained by an ancient tree. That Senior is suppressed by the mountain, unable to lift his head. As for the maiden in the lake, she is as graceful as a celestial being, yet her eyes are filled with emptiness. Junior has always been clear about gratitude and grudges. I have no grudges with seniors. Even if I obtain the inheritance, why would I be trapped here? This isn't the Tao I'm pursuing. Tion's eyes gleamed brightly as he stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He pursued the path of cultivation at the age of 16. How many supercilious eyes did he encounter? How much contempt did he receive? The Tao he pursued was to be free and unfettered in the world of mortals. The red-haired old man stared into Tion's eyes. There was a kind of pursuit, a kind of obsession. There was no falsehood at all. The red-haired old man couldn't help but to laugh maniacally. At this moment, the entire space trembled as he laughed maniacally. There were hundreds of people who entered this place. All of them were extremely ruthless, wanting to trample on our corpses to strengthen themselves. You are the first one who dared to speak ill of this old thief. If you were the one who obtained this old thief's inheritance, how interesting would that be? At this moment, the entire space fell silent. An instant later, someone from afar roared, How do you know this man isn't extremely scheming? It's not like we haven't met such a character before. Then just take it that I'm blind. It's been 80,000 years. If he can deceive my eyes, I have nothing to say. So what if I do my best to help him? In addition, even if we want to help him, it would depend on his own capabilities. If he really can't be nurtured, I will personally kill him. The red-haired old man spoke in a loud voice. After which, he stared at Tion as he continued, Remember, everyone here is sealed. Within the radius of the seal, they can only unleash strength at the peak of Heavenly Dipper. If you can start from me and sweep through them one by one, only then would you have a chance to obtain this old thief's inheritance. We don't have our memories sealed. We are much stronger compared to those fellows who were buried outside. Just make your move. Other than not killing you, we won't be polite to you. The red-haired old man spoke to Tion. Junior will naturally do my best. Tion nodded. He stared at the red-haired old man as his true intent gushed forth. Staring at him, the true intent of Dreamscape appeared. A fiery red world, akin to a sea of fire. This was a dreamscape. In this dreamscape, Tion discovered that he was buried within the sea of fire. He stared at the red-haired old man walking towards him as a look of defeat appeared on his face. True intent of Dreamscape? I know it as well. Fiery red chains appeared from the sea of fire, binding Tion. After which, the red-haired old man took out a fiery halberd that was branded with a fiery red and pierced it into Tion's body. A scream of misery rang out from Tion's mouth. His countenance was pale white as an expression of agony could be seen on his countenance. He was brought into purgatory by the red-haired old man's true intent of dreamscape, and he actually had no way to break free. After a long time, the red-haired old man released the true intent of dreamscape. Tion's entire body was devoid of strength as sweat drenched his entire body. He was even weaker than after fighting for an entire day and night. If someone wanted to kill him now, it would be extremely easy. You can go to the front. Your usage of true intent is still too weak. The red-haired old man spoke to Tion, causing Tion to nod his head. His current strength could be considered at the peak amongst heavenly dipper sovereigns in the outside world. But in front of the red-haired old man, he was simply too weak. After resting for a moment, stabilizing his state of mind, Tion walked to the lake. He stared at Fairy Lingbo as he bowed. "Fairy, please guide me." Walala. The lake water roared as it instantly gushed towards Tion. A bone-chilling aura corroded Tion's body. Tion soared up into the air, only to see the lake water coiling around him like a flood dragon. Boom! Tion's true intent erupted forth as he soared up into the air, causing towering waves to surge up into the sky. However, at this instant, the flood dragon seemed to have solidified, becoming incomparably heavy. This wasn't just a single true intent, it was a fusion of true intents. Tion's entire body radiated a towering aura as he soared up into the air. However, the entire lake water coiled around his body and flung him towards the shore. The silhouette of Fairy Lingbo continued walking on the lake, as though nothing had happened. Tion continued forward and found an expert sitting on a stone platform. That expert had a long spear in his hands, and the tip of the spear gleamed with the light of lightning. With just a single strike, the terrifying lightning energy instantly caused Tion's entire body to go numb. After which, that lightning spear transformed into a bolt of lightning that shot past Tion's head. That was a true bolt of lightning, and it instantly streaked past Tion's head. If he wanted to kill Tion, a single strike would suffice. Too strong, Tion truly felt the disparity between them. However, he didn't feel disappointed at all. How terrifying was the control an immortal had over a true intent? Most probably, this was just a casual strike from them. If they could fuse their true intents together, it would be even more terrifying. Tion started the path of being oppressed. However, these people had truly shown mercy and didn't kill him. If not, he would have already died several times over. With immortals personally clashing against him, Tion's strength improved at an astonishing speed. Every day, he would frenziedly absorb the experience and comprehend unceasingly. After a month, his usage of true intents had also become much more terrifying. As for the other dimension, Qin Wenyin was also cultivating with his eyes closed. When Tion battled, he would comprehend, and when Tion comprehended, he would continue to comprehend. By doing so, his strength would improve even faster. In addition, Qin Wenyin had already started to attempt to fuse true intents together. It was similar to what he did in the grass hut. Once he fused true intents together, he would fuse them into an innate technique, causing the might of his innate technique to be even more terrifying. Chapter 640. In fact, before Qin Wenyin comprehended the true intent of his mandate, he had already attempted to fuse his mandates. The void imprint, void halberd art, the fusion of the mandate of dreams and the mandate of force. It was just that this fusion was still shallow, and now that his mandates had transformed into true intent, he needed a brand new fusion. On the desolate land, Qin Wenyin wielded an ancient halberd in his hands as he stabbed out again and again. Every strike of his halberd contained shocking might, as though boundless energy was condensed into a single point, erupting forth with terrifying might. With the experience of fusing wills, Qin Wenyin unceasingly attempted to fuse two different true intents into a single innate technique. True intent. What is true intent? True intent is the embodiment of a certain type of energy. Qin Wenyin murmured in a low voice. After many attempts, He closed his eyes and tried to comprehend Di Tian's battle once more. As Di Tian's strength grew stronger, some of the experts in that dimension started to fuse their innate techniques with their true intents against him. The newly manifested energy seemed to be brand new, and didn't belong to any of the individual true intents. Sometimes, it was even hard to tell what type of true intent was contained within their attacks. On both sides, Di Tian fought, while Qin Wendian comprehended. Day after day, Qin Wentian's comprehension and usage of true intent grew stronger and stronger. Today, Qin Wendian was still brandishing his ancient halberd again and again. Thousands, tens of thousands of times, he didn't feel the slightest fatigue. This was his obsession. If he wanted to become stronger, he had to endure this sort of boredom. Although his comprehension ability wasn't bad, and he would occasionally gain enlightenment, he wouldn't be able to do it every single time. No matter how talented a character was, if he didn't have the mental fortitude to never give up, it would be impossible for him to break through his limits and step into the next level. Bzz. A terrifying tearing sound rang out. The ancient halberd was like a dragon, capable of tearing apart everything. In that instant, at the instant the ancient halberd erupted forth, a speck of light appeared at the tip of the halberd. This speck of light was akin to astral energy, like a brand new type of energy. I can sense it. Qin Wendian rejoiced in his heart. This was the feeling. He stabbed out with his halberd once more, causing specks of light to appear, causing the tip of the ancient halberd to be faintly discernible. However, the terrifying power contained within the halberd caused it to feel surreal. Qin Wendian suppressed the palpitations in his heart as he stabbed out with the ancient halberd again and again. Astral light shone resplendently as the ancient halberd shone with an illusory luster. It was as though the halberd was a manifestation of a dream in reality. The fusion of true intents caused the strength of the halberd to undergo a transformation. That's it. This type of energy is able to fuse with the astral energy of the astral constellations, the materialization of true intent. Qin Wentian's heart trembled. Strands of unique astral energy emanated from his body. These strands of astral energy seemed to be infused with true intents, causing his entire body to be shrouded in a layer of illusory luster. Yet, at the same time, he gave off a feeling of strength. Ooh! Qin Wendian drew in a deep breath. He had finally peeked through another door. Since this door had been opened, success would naturally follow when the conditions were right. Just like how after he comprehended the first true intent, it was much easier for him to comprehend the subsequent true intents of mandates. A few days later, Qin Wentian's entire body shone with a demonic luster. With a single glance, he gave off an extremely demonic feeling. His handsome eyes and brows seemed to be dyed black, giving off a sense of sharpness. True intent of demonic and true intent of force. Both are proficient in offense. If they can fuse together, the resulting energy would definitely increase explosively. Qin Wendian mused as he continued brandishing his ancient halberd. It was as though he would never feel fatigue, and there would be no end to it. When a strand of incomparably violent light particles appeared, Qin Wentian's eyes flickered with a demonic light. This kind of energy was filled with a violent destructive might. Every single particle of light seemed to contain a power that could destroy everything in its path, as though it was endless. This kind of energy, even if used for defense, would be extremely powerful. Qin Wendian murmured. After which, strands of light enveloped his body, giving him a layer of demonic and dazzling radiance. This kind of energy still contained a demonic aura, but it was even more terrifying than before. For those who haven't comprehended an attack-type true intent, they wouldn't even be able to break through my defense. Qin Wendian murmured. This bit-by-bit improvement caused him to be extremely excited. At his level, it wasn't easy for him to advance by even a tiny bit. It was even more difficult to advance by a few levels. But now that he could fuse his true intent together, there was no doubt that his strength would increase exponentially. Qin Wendian was improving. This meant that Di Tian was improving as well. Such improvement caused those experts who thought that Di Tian had no hope at all to gradually feel a glimmer of hope. Di Tian's improvement was simply too fast, so fast that it caused them to feel fear in their hearts. After living for such a long period of time, a few years or tens of years were nothing more than the blink of an eye. In just a few months, Di Tian's strength continued to grow stronger. If he could maintain such a speed, it was unknown if he would be able to step into a level that no one had ever reached before. The master of the Immortal Palace was searching for a successor, trying to find someone who could defeat an immortal at the Heavenly Dipper realm. To them, this was extremely ridiculous. Immortals were extremely proficient in the usage of energy and their ability to fuse them together. Even if their cultivation bases were suppressed, they would still be able to insta-kill those who claimed to be at the peak of Heavenly Dipper. Defeated? They truly felt that no one could do it. Di Tian's improvement was very fast, but to them, it was merely a glimmer of hope. In addition, this might just be one of the tests. But what sort of character was that old thief? It was understandable that he would be so harsh when choosing a successor. It has already been half a year since Qin Wendian entered the Immortal Palace. On this desolate land, no traces of time could be seen. Although Di Tian's improvement was very fast, he still had a long way to go. It was unknown where the end was. Qin Wendian prepared to head out. His comprehension had already reached a bottleneck. In the outside world, Qing Cheng and Qing Er might still be worried for him. It was enough for him to leave Di Tian in the Immortal Palace. On this desolate land, numerous immortal tombs could be seen. There were many treasures here, as well as tens of thousands of immortal manuals, causing people to feel an intense urge to plunder them. However, Qin Wendian didn't touch them. If Di Tian could complete his test, everything here would belong to him. As for now, although Qin Wendian was even more confident in his own strength, he still didn't feel that he could kill a tomb immortal alone. The wind gusted by, staining his white robes with dust. Qin Wendian's silhouette flickered as he sped through the desolate land, heading back the way he came from. He had no idea how those tomb immortals were doing now. He remembered that there was a tomb immortal who blocked their path of retreat. He wondered if he was still alive or not. Fan Miaoyu? At this moment, Qin Wendian saw the silhouette of a female not far away from him. She was in a sorry state and seemed to be fleeing. It was none other than Fan Miaoyu. Emichim? Qin Wendian turned his gaze to the direction behind Fan Miaoyu. Another silhouette of a female could be seen rushing towards Fan Miaoyu. Behind this female, there was a silhouette with his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes were blank and vacant. It was none other than a tomb immortal. Fan Miaoyu also saw Qin Wendian. Upon seeing Qin Wendian moving towards her, she involuntarily called out, "She is trying to frame me. Don't get near me, walk in another direction." Qin Wendian's countenance turned cold as he stared at the female behind him. It was none other than the female from the Grand Shang faction of the Royal Sacred Sect who mocked him earlier. Evidently, this female was targeted by the tomb immortal and he intentionally lured her towards Fan Miaoyu. However, this tomb immortal didn't seem to have any intentions of killing her. He casually strolled about. If he truly used his full strength, he would have long since killed her. Quinn! Fan Miaoyu was alone. In front of her, there was another silhouette rushing over. It was none other than Quinn. Don't worry, he shouldn't have any killing intent. Qin Wendian's silhouette had already arrived in front of Fan Miaoyu. Staring at the female rushing over, a cold light flickered in his eyes. The tomb immortal behind her had a flute in his hands, and his steps were extremely carefree. His countenance was exceedingly handsome. It was very possible that he was a romantic immortal in the past. "Let's go." Qin Wendian spoke in a low voice. Fan Miaoyu nodded. The three of them turned, only to see the female following behind them. Qin Wendian abruptly turned as a sharp light flashed in his eyes, piercing the eyes of the female. "If you take one more step, I will kill you." As the sound of his voice faded, his killing intent intensified. The female's steps faltered as she stared at Qin Wendian with trepidation in her eyes. "How dare you!" The countenance of the female was as cold as ice. Qin Wendian stared at her, no longer as low profile as when he was in the Royal Sacred Sect. His eyes were as cold as ice, akin to an unsheathed sword, gleaming with killing intent. However, at this moment, the silhouette of the tomb immortal transformed into a series of afterimages as he sped towards Qin Wenyin. His speed was as fast as lightning, and as he pointed out with his flute, a beam of cold light erupted forth. Qin Wenyin and Qin both stepped out at the same time, and both of them slashed out with their swords. Qin's sword was like a flying immortal, incomparably carefree, yet contained a terrifying might. Qin Wentian's sword was tyrannical and sharp, containing an incomparably fearsome explosive might. With a thunderous boom, a fissure appeared on the ground. Qin Wenyin actually blocked the attack of the tomb immortal. "You guys leave first." Qin Wenyin spoke to Qin and Fan Miaoyu. The two of them started, staring at Qin Wenyin in bewilderment. "Leave first." Qin spoke to Fan Miaoyu. "No." Fan Miaoyu shook her head, her words causing Qin Wenyin to be stunned. And at this moment, a raging wind gusted by as the tomb immortal slowly walked over, exuding an overwhelming killing intent. Qin Wenyin stepped out as his bloodline thrummed. His entire person became incomparably demonic as cracking sounds rang out as his robes were torn apart. Astral armor appeared on his body as his body expanded in size. A gigantic blood-colored ancient halberd appeared in his hands as a terrifying light circulated around it, containing a fearsome might within. Water mist appeared, enveloping the tomb immortal as sound waves blasted out. The tomb immortal waved his palms as the water mist was directly sliced apart. The silhouette wielding the long flute stepped out, resembling a beam of killing light as he rushed towards Qin Wenyin. The divine energy in Qin Wentian's body gushed forth frenziedly, as strands of mystical energy coiled around the ancient halberd in his hands. Stepping out, the ancient halberd in his hands pierced out, flickering in and out of existence. When the ancient halberd reappeared, it was already directly in front of the buried immortal. An incomparably violent energy erupted forth, colliding head-on with the immortal's attack, causing the earth to split apart. Qin and Fan Miaoyu also rushed over at the same time, only to see Qin's silhouette transforming into a series of afterimages as beams of sword light slashed out from the void. The long flute in the hands of the tomb immortal trembled as an intense light erupted forth. His silhouette arced through the ground as he explosively retreated, instantly widening the distance between him and Qin Wenyin. Fusion true intent. Qin Wenyin glanced at Qin as a smile appeared on his face. As expected of a heaven-chosen of the battle sword sect, Qin's combat prowess was truly shocking. Qin Wenyin didn't know that at this moment, Qin's heart was pounding. In just half a year's time, Qin Wenyin had actually become so terrifying. As for the female from the Grand Shang faction, she was completely dumbfounded. The three of them joined forces and actually managed to force the tomb immortal to retreat. Not only that, Qin Wentian's attack was a head-on attack. Chapter 641. The buried immortal with the flute in his hands was forced back. His hands were slanted to the side as the raging wind howled. The killing intent radiating from him grew increasingly terrifying. Inclining his head, his eyes flickered with an unexcelled might as he stared at Qin Wenyin. Bzz. After images appeared, it was impossible to see how fast he was moving. Qin Wenyin even closed his eyes as his sword intent abruptly permeated the air. He took a large step forward as a sword imprint appeared in the air. Die! With a wave of his palms, the omnipresent sword might whistled through the air, causing rumbling sounds to echo out unceasingly. It was as though the sword chi was being blocked unceasingly. However, the raging wind grew more and more terrifying, even enveloping Qin Wenyin within it. A fearsome violet light flashed within the raging wind, akin to an apocalyptic tempest, as it slashed towards Qin Wenyin. Qin, Fan Miaoyu and Fan Miaoyu who were outside trembled involuntarily when they saw the scene. That buried immortal danced in the wind, it was impossible to see where he was. It was as though he was a part of this tempest. What should we do? Fan Miaoyu's countenance was as pale as paper, she stared at Qin with a pleading gaze. At this moment she felt completely helpless. She truly didn't wish for a character as magnificent as Qin Wenyan to die here. But when that buried immortal unleashed his true strength, he was basically an invincible existence to them. Qin Wentian's body gleamed with a terrifying demonic light, resembling a supreme demon king that stood tall on the ground. His astral nova appeared, exuding a fearsome sword might. The surface of the astral nova shimmered with light that seemed capable of slicing through everything. Rumbling sounds rang out as the sword pierced through the air, slashing towards the tempest. The terrifying screeching sound pierced the eardrums of those who heard it. Several cracks appeared on the tempest, but because of the speed at which it revolved, the cracks instantly healed. So strong. To think that the fusion of true meanings can be used in a mystic art to such a frightening extent. Qin Wentian's heart trembled. His 4 Yuanfu roared as his divine energy gushed into his palms. Runic light shone resplendently as the power of his true intent circulated within his palms. With a roar of rage, Qin Wenyan rushed out, manifesting numerous demon-like silhouettes that could pluck stars from the sky, suppressing immortals and devils. At this instant, an opening actually appeared in the tempest as Qin Wenyan transformed into a great rock, instantly fleeing into the distance. Buzz! The windstorm churned and soared up into the air, sweeping up the sand in its wake as it chased after Qin Wenyan with the power to destroy the heavens and earth. Qin Wentian's footsteps were extremely quick as a spatial scroll appeared in his hands. After which, he abruptly activated it, wrapping it around his body as he vanished from his original location, reappearing in the distance. That tempest continued chasing after him, and gradually, it was far away from Qin and Fan Miaoyu's line of sight. He's become so strong. Great waves rocked Fan Miaoyu's heart. She simply had no way to imagine how Qin Wenyan managed to accomplish such a leap in strength. Compared to her back then on the sacred battle platform, Qin Wenyan wasn't merely a level stronger. Since he can suppress even era-suppressing geniuses, it's not strange for him to become a legend. Qin laughed in a carefree manner. After which, he stepped out and departed in a carefree manner, not bothering to look at Qin Wenyan anymore. Since Qin Wenyan had the interspatial scroll, he should be able to escape from the pursuit of that buried immortal. Fan Miaoyu glanced at the female who led the buried immortal towards her as she icily spoke. Do you still remember mocking him back then in the royal sacred sect? How ironic. After speaking, Fan Miaoyu also departed. Although she hated this female for leading the buried immortal to her, Fan Miaoyu didn't have the ability to do anything to her. The female turned ashen as she departed as well. Other than anger, there was also a trace of desolation in her eyes. She was a heaven's chosen from the Grand Shang faction. Even after joining the royal sacred sect, she was still extremely dazzling, having comprehended 3 types of true intents and had extraordinary combat prowess. But in this immortal palace, she couldn't find any value in her existence. She was simply too weak. Although the people here were all at the heavenly dipper realm, she could clearly feel how tiny and insignificant she was. Wanting to obtain immortal arts or immortal weapons was undoubtedly the ravings of a lunatic. Now it was time for her to leave. Other than suffering a blow to her confidence, she didn't gain anything else. However, she understood that there would always be a sky beyond a sky. When she arrived at the exit of the immortal palace, she actually saw quite a few people waiting there. She walked up and called out to the 2 people in the lead, Senior Xia Sheng, Senior Zai Qiu. The gazes of everyone turned to her. Xia Sheng asked, "Did you gain anything?" "Nope." The female shook her head. "Buried immortals are simply too powerful, there's no way for us to win against them. This time around, our royal sacred sect must have lost many geniuses. Even junior brother Sun Qing." When Sun Qing was mentioned, the countenances of Xia Sheng and Zai Qiu instantly turned incredibly unsightly. Zai Qiu coldly continued, "If it wasn't for the fact that those 2 didn't listen to our orders, how could Sun Qing have died?" "Senior brother, are you talking about Qin Wenyan and Qin?" When the female thought of Qin Wenyan, hatred flickered in her eyes. This person had a deep grudge with the Grand Shang faction, But the battle sword faction wouldn't allow him to die unless Xia Sheng and Zai Qiu wanted to deal with him. Not only that, Qin Wentian's strength had improved so rapidly. In the future, he would only grow more and more terrifying. As she thought of this, flames of jealousy burned in her heart. Not long ago, I met the two of them. They met a buried immortal and actually led the buried immortal to me, almost causing me to die. Since they did such a thing to me, I'm sure they would do the same to their fellow sect members as well. The countenances of Zai Qiu and Xia Sheng grew increasingly unsightly. In Zai Qiu's eyes, traces of killing intent could be seen flickering within. He then spoke to the female. Right now, there are quite a few buried immortals in this desolate land. It's already impossible for us to join forces to hunt them down. We can only come again if there's an opportunity. As for the other matters, let's talk after we leave this place. Hua Taishu hasn't returned yet. Should we wait a little longer? Someone from the core faction asked. No need. This immortal palace is strange. It's hard to enter, but it's very easy to exit. Xia Sheng shook his head. The others didn't say anything more and all returned, leaving the immortal palace. They knew that after they left, they wouldn't have another chance to enter again. Even if they did, it would be useless. After these people exited, the expert surnamed Li sat in meditation outside. He knew that even with such a large group of people, they wouldn't have much of a harvest. He could only sigh and return. If they wanted to conquer this immortal palace, it was unknown how long they would have to wait. This group of people had the same information as those who came before. The strength of the buried immortals was extremely high, and they were invincible at the same level. It was just that this group of people seemed to know some things. There was a high possibility that there was a supreme expert waiting for a successor in this immortal palace. If our royal sacred sect can produce a supreme character and obtain the inheritance of the immortal palace lord, his future achievements would definitely be unprecedented. The expert surnamed Li mused as he sighed again. However, he didn't know when such a character would appear. Several days later, the group of people all returned to the royal sacred sect and entered closed-door seclusion. Although they didn't have many harvests during this trip, the strength of many of them had improved greatly. Qin also returned to the battle sword faction of the royal sacred sect. After that, Xia Sheng sent out a summons for those who entered the immortal palace this time around to gather together. There was something they wanted to discuss, and everyone happily departed. Siko and Qin traveled together. On the way, Siko reminded Qin, "Back then you didn't save Sun Qing, he might bear a grudge against you. You have to be more careful this time around." In the territory of the core faction of the royal sacred sect, even if Zai Qiu and Xia Sheng hate me, they can't possibly act against me in front of so many people. Qin smiled and shook his head, appearing as carefree as ever. Although he knew that Sun Qing and Xia Sheng's relationship was extremely good, he did save Fan Miaoyu back then. Who could say that he was in the wrong? The human heart is unfathomable. You are frank and open, but not everyone in the world is as pedantic as you. In any case, if there's anything wrong, just retreat. Siko and Qin had different personalities. In Siko's eyes, Qin was too righteous, just like his sword. Right. Qin smiled and nodded. The two of them continued on their way, and when they met Fan Miaoyu, Qin couldn't help but to smile and greet her. Fan Miaoyu had always been very grateful to Qin. Back then in the Immortal Palace, Qin saved her life. Not only that, his character was upright, radiant, and his talent was also extremely high. "Senior, has Qin Wendian not returned yet?" Fan Miaoyu smiled as she asked. "Nope, I wonder what good fortune he would encounter in there. But that fellow, there's no need for us to worry about him." Qin laughed. Fan Miaoyu nodded her head, and not long after, they arrived at the location of the core faction of the Royal Sacred Sect. Up ahead, there was a public square with a banquet prepared. Zai Qiu was clad in luxurious robes and stood at the very front. Upon seeing Qin's arrival, his sharp eyes flickered with a cold light. Qin frowned. It was as though he could sense the unfriendliness in Zai Qiu's eyes. But an instant later, he relaxed. It was only normal for Zai Qiu to hate him for Sun Qing's death. "Qin, do you know your crimes?" Quinn and the two others just landed on the ground when Zai Chio's cold voice drifted over. Quinn's countenance flickered as he asked, "Zai Chio, what do you mean by this?" Senior Uncle Ji once said that everyone in the Immortal Palace has to listen to the commands of Xia Sheng and me. Yet you disobeyed the command. This is the first crime. In the Immortal Palace, we are all disciples of the same sect. Yet you led the buried immortal to your own sect, causing a calamity to befall you. This is the second crime. Both crimes are unforgivable. Zai Chio's killing intent flashed in his eyes. He didn't feign civility, nor did he exchange pleasantries. He directly stated his reasons, using righteousness to suppress Quinn. Evidently, the second crime was sufficient to take Quinn's life. "Quinn, let's go." Siko transmitted his voice to Quinn. "The first crime happened in an emergency. I didn't even have time to think. As for the second crime, it's complete nonsense." Quinn coldly replied, "Is that so? Junior sister Shang can be my witness." Zai Chio stared at the maiden from the Grand Shang faction. "You are despicable." Fan Miaoyu berated. Clearly, she was the one who did such a despicable thing. "Fan Miaoyu, although Quinn saved your life, if you continue to distort the truth because of him, don't blame me for being impolite." Zai Chio icily spoke, his killing intent flashing in his eyes. "On what basis should your words be the truth, while I'm distorting the truth?" Fan Miaoyu retorted. "Because my surname is Zai." A tyrannical aura gushed forth from Zai Chio. The surname of Zai, the surname of the sacred emperor of the royal sacred sect. Chapter 642. Quinn died. His crime was determined by Zai Chio and he killed him on the spot. The only ones who participated were the peak-level Heavenly Dipper sovereigns from the core faction. Fan Miaoyu stared in horror at the scene before her. She only felt her blood solidifying as her entire body turned cold. Quinn's sword was dripping with blood, the blood of an expert from the core faction. He had chopped off the arm of an expert from the core faction, but right now, Zai Chio's palm was right where his heart should be. His life force instantly withered away. Xia Sheng's fist smashed into his back, shattering his internal organs, and a long spear pierced right through the center of his brows. Fan Miaoyu panted heavily. Never in her wildest dreams would she have imagined that Zai Chio and the others would actually dare to kill Quinn on the spot. The instant he shouted out his surname was Zai, all of them had already acted together, using thunderous methods to surround Quinn, not allowing any accidents to happen. Zai Chio wanted to act first and report later. Only by doing so would he be able to avenge Sun Qing. In truth, Sun Qing's death wasn't what Quinn wanted. At that time, he and Qin Wendian could only choose to save one person, and both of them chose Fan Miaoyu. And because they chose to save Fan Miaoyu, there was such a tragic scene before their eyes. One could very well imagine Fan Miaoyu's emotions right now. She had never imagined that the royal sacred sect would be so cruel and cold-blooded. Siko's heart pounded violently as he stared at Quinn's death. His eyes turned red as he drew in a deep breath, trying his best to calm his heart. His personality was destined to be able to endure silently. He had always felt that the human heart was unfathomable, hence when he reminded Quinn to be careful earlier, Quinn didn't really mind. Siko also thought that Zai Chio and the others wouldn't be so ruthless, but he had still underestimated Zai Chio's determination to kill Quinn. In fact, Siko was sure that Zai Chio didn't report this matter to the upper echelons and acted first before reporting. If not, killing a heaven chosen of the Battle Sword sect wouldn't be permitted by the upper echelons. This was also the reason why Siko felt that Quinn's life wouldn't be in danger today. Hence, he didn't forcefully stop Quinn. Zai Chio retracted his palm that was aimed at Quinn's heart. Quinn's body softly slumped to the ground, lying in a pool of his own blood. A peak-tier Heavenly Dipper chosen of the Battle Sword sect died just like that, dying with grievance. At this moment, everyone who came to the gathering felt their hearts tremble at Zai Chio's ruthlessness. The orders of our royal sacred sect are like mountains, everyone has to respect them. Quinn disobeyed the orders and even caused his fellow sect members to be in danger. He's a traitor and shall be killed without mercy. Zai Chio's cold voice resounded through the silence, causing Fan Miaoyu to feel as though even the wind had turned cold. What a traitor, kill without mercy. Since he had already made up his mind to kill, all arguments were meaningless. All of this was because his surname was Zai. What happened? A slightly cold voice rang out. Obviously, someone had discovered the situation here, and experts were rushing over. Quinn disobeyed Uncle Master Ji's orders, causing junior brother Sun Qing's tragic death, and then putting junior sister Shang in danger. He should be executed. Zai Chio spoke. Upon hearing him mentioning Uncle Master Ji, everyone fell silent. Their silhouettes flickered, and not long after, a voice drifted over. Zai Chio, Elder Ji wants you to head to his palace. The others can disperse first. Zai Chio's silhouette flickered as he coldly stared at Quinn's corpse. After which, he sped away while mumbling in his heart, "There's still one more." Xia Sheng and the others also departed. Saiku walked up and carried Quinn's corpse before turning and departing the area. Fan Miaoyu followed behind Saiku. This era-suppressing Heaven's Chosen had a dazed expression on her face. Even now, she still couldn't accept that Quinn was killed just like that. Zai Chio arrived in front of Elder Li. Staring at the cold and indifferent eyes of Elder Li, Zai Chio's gaze flickered with a hint of evasiveness. Saiku's guess was correct. Zai Chio had indeed acted first and reported later. "Zai Chio, you are too ridiculous." Elder Ji berated. Killing a Heaven Chosen of the Battle Sword faction would definitely cause the hearts of the Battle Sword faction to be shaken. "Uncle Master, someone has to pay for the death of junior brother Sun Qing." Zai Chio didn't hide anything in front of Elder Ji. He did it for the sake of Sun Qing, and as for the crime he pinned on Quinn, it was because he wanted to kill Quinn. But to his own Uncle Master, the junior apprentice brother of his master, there was no need for him to fabricate any excuses. "So you acted arbitrarily and acted together with Xia Sheng and the others, killing Quinn in public?" Elder Ji coldly spoke. "Take responsibility? Is there someone else who needs to take responsibility?" "Yes, there's also Qin Wenyin." Zai Chio continued. "This person is even more arrogant and untamed compared to Quinn. Back then, he rejected Uncle Master's offer to join our core faction. Since he refuses to submit, I shall kill him." As the sound of the word, kill, faded, a cold killing intent gushed forth from Zai Chio. Elder Ji stared at Zai Chio, causing Zai Chio to lower his head again. He couldn't see through his Uncle Master's thoughts. He had never been able to. Elder Ji stared at Zai Chio for a long time before he spoke again. "The influence of this matter isn't good." "Influence?" "My royal sacred sect is able to rule over the various factions not because of any benevolence or righteousness, but because we have the strength to suppress everything. If the Battle Sword sect is unhappy, you can just scram out of the royal sacred sect. There will naturally be countless sects in the royal sacred region willing to replace you. Without this protective talisman that is the royal sacred sect, how long can the Battle Sword sect be strong when faced with the hearts of tigers and wolves in the external world?" Zai Chio inclined his head as he spoke. My royal sacred sect, he spoke of, seemed to have excluded all the other factions. In the hearts of these people, the royal sacred sect was the leader of the core faction. Only this core faction was the true royal sacred sect. Elder Ji fell silent for a moment before he sighed and spoke in a low voice. "Qin Wenyin, what a pity. He is truly a rare Heaven Chosen. I won't participate in this matter. You can go and make the arrangements." "Yes, Uncle Master." Zai Chio felt joy in his heart. Seems like his Uncle Master had tacitly agreed to it. This was the effect of acting first and reporting later. Since things have already happened, there was no way to reverse it. Given his Uncle Master's personality, he would definitely do everything perfectly, leaving no loose ends. After Zai Chio left, the eyes of Elder Ji flashed with sharpness. "Qin Wenyin, I've already given you a chance. Since you refuse to join my faction, your name shall be erased from the royal sacred region." In front of the Battle Sword sect's grand hall, the crowd stared at Quinn's corpse as sorrow filled their hearts. "Quinn." An old man gently stroked Quinn's face, helping him to close his eyes. This old man was none other than Quin's master. At this moment, he seemed to have aged immensely. He was extremely fond of this disciple of his. Quin's talent was good, his personality was gentle, and he was upright. His swords were like him. He was extremely suitable to cultivate in the way of the sword. However, this outstanding disciple of his had died just like that. Not only that, he died in the hands of someone from the royal sacred sect. Even the leader of the battle sword faction had arrived. In the royal sacred sect, he held the title of vice sect leader. Not only him, the leaders of the other factions all had the title of vice sect leader and were in charge of their respective factions. But right now, a disciple of his faction was killed in public. This was already equivalent to smacking his face. Old sect leader. Quin's master stared at the old man. This old man was the previous sect leader of the battle sword sect. These people of the battle sword faction all came from the battle sword sect, hence they were more willing to refer to this old man as the old sect leader. Tell me everything clearly. The old man spoke to Siko. Siko nodded his head and recounted Sun Qing's death. At the same time, Fan Miaoyu also explained the actions of that female surnamed Shang, which Zai Qiu used to frame Quin. After hearing the narration of the two of them, the countenances of the crowd turned even colder. There were even some who wanted to head to the core faction to demand for Quin. Wenyan is in danger. The old man faintly spoke, his words causing the hearts of everyone to tremble. That's right, since Zai Qiu dared to kill Quin in public, he would definitely not spare Qin Wenyan. Old sect leader, are you not going to demand for Quin? Quin's master's eyes turned red as he asked. Demand? Do you think they will hand Zai Qiu over? At this moment, the old man didn't have the same playful attitude he had when he was talking to Qin Wenyan. Instead, he was extremely solemn, exuding a powerful imposingness. Could it be that they can do whatever they want and be so rude? Quin's master raged. In the royal sacred region, the royal sacred sect is the hegemon of this generation, while the core faction is the true core. But the old man asked. Because of strength, because of that legendary realm. Quin's master replied. You should also know that the reason why they can control everything and make us submit to them isn't because of benevolence or righteousness, it's because of strength. What is strength? If there's a day when one of us can reach that legendary realm, we would be able to exist independently, standing on equal footing with the royal sacred sect, recruiting disciples from all over the world to join us. The old man stared at Quin's master as he solemnly continued, these words aren't treasonous or unfilial, but rather, it's a logic that all the factions know in their hearts. Without that legendary realm, do you think they would care about our faction? In fact, they don't even need to act themselves, they can just order the other factions to suppress us. The other factions would be more than happy to do so, and as for the battle sword sect, they can always support us. After all, there are too many major powers in the royal sacred region. The words of the old man caused everyone to be dumbfounded. If they resisted, they could directly suppress them. Without the battle sword sect, they could support another major power. In this place, the core faction was the absolute hegemon. Fan Miaoyu's entire body turned cold as she trembled. Although they all faintly understood some of this logic, when they heard it from the leader of the battle sword sect, it was like the morning bell ringing in the evening. This was the world of martial arts, cruel and cold. As for benevolence and righteousness, you have to have the strength first before you have the qualifications to talk about it. If not, the strongest martial arts could suppress everything. Everyone seemed to have a deeper understanding of the meaning of the royal sacred sect, the hegemon of the royal sacred region. The royal sacred sect leader actually said this in front of everyone. Wasn't he afraid that this news would leak out? Because this was a logic that everyone understood. If they didn't rebel, the royal sacred sect wouldn't suppress them for no reason. Just because of a single sentence? The experts from the core faction of the royal sacred sect didn't have such leisure time. As for having the intention to rebel, there were countless sects in the royal sacred region who didn't want to replace the royal sacred sect. There were no sects or aristocratic clans who didn't want to. But the prerequisite was that they didn't have someone at that cultivation realm. Was that possible? Chapter 643. Although there were many factions in the royal sacred sect, they didn't interfere too much with each other. Rather than saying that this was a complete sect, it was more like an alliance, mutually dependent on each other. This point was very clear to the various factions. To the core faction, in their eyes, the royal sacred sect only had themselves. The other factions were all vassals. If the royal sacred sect was truly a complete entity, Elderly wouldn't have invited Qin Wenyan to join the core faction. In this alliance, the core faction undoubtedly held the leading position. They were the strongest, and the other factions could all be replaced. In the history of the royal sacred sect, there had been many changes. If one was too weak, they would be eliminated from the royal sacred sect, no longer having the qualifications to remain in the sect. As for the royal sacred sect, there would naturally be times when they needed the support of the various factions. However, the old man didn't say too much about this. He also felt pain in his heart over Quinn's death. But if he wanted to rebel, it was impossible for him to do so. He knew that once he did so, to the battle sword faction, it would be a calamity of destruction. Reality was simply so cruel. Zai Qiu killed a heaven chosen of his faction, yet he could only endure it. In addition, the core faction might even be wary of them in the future. With regards to all of this, Qin Wenyan had no idea. At this moment, he was on his way back to the sacred royal city. As to why he was late by a few days, it was because he didn't have the guidance of Elderly. Hence, he took a few more days before exiting the illusionary mountain range. That mountain range was boundlessly vast, and the Immortal Palace was located there. It was exceedingly difficult to locate it, but exiting it was much easier. The Immortal Palace was too small, while the outside world was too vast. Qin Wentian's heart was set on returning, hence his speed was extremely fast. Outside one of the city gates of the sacred royal city, a flawlessly beautiful silhouette stood there. Her gaze was staring into the horizons, as though she was waiting for someone to return. Behind this flawlessly beautiful maiden, there were several silhouettes. They were all maidens of the Medicine Sovereign Valley, and their demeanor was extraordinary. Who is the holy maiden of the Medicine Sovereign Valley waiting for? She has already been here for 2 days. Many people felt their hearts trembling. Such a devastatingly beautiful maiden had actually been standing here for 2 days without moving at all? To be able to make the holy maiden wait, other than the top ranker of the immortal martial realm, Qin Wenyan, who else could there be? Someone laughed. However, they had no idea why Mo Qingqing was waiting for Qin Wenyan here. Right now, a year has already passed since the immortal martial realm, but Qin Wentian's name was still as resounding as ever. On the sacred battle platform, he slew Di Shi, fought against numerous outstanding heroes, and even caused the era-suppressing genius at the 9th level of Heavenly Dipper, Fan Miaoyu, to admit defeat. However, after that battle, the royal sacred sect seemed to have invited Qin Wenyan and the other geniuses over. After that, Qin Wenyan vanished without a trace. Maybe he went to some secret realms. If I could receive such treatment from the holy maiden, I would even be willing to die. Someone sighed. In truth, Mo Qingqing had no other choice but to wait here. If Qin Wenyan returned, he should have used this direction to return to the sacred royal city. If she went out now, the area would be too vast. She knew of Quinn's death, and after hearing the entire story, she knew that Qin Wenyan might be in danger as well. In that case, she could only wait here personally. If the royal sacred sect directly acted against Qin Wenyan, they could only fall out with the royal sacred sect. After waiting for another day, the crowd in the air didn't stop. Mo Qingqing's gaze never shifted away. Not only for her, there were already many spies from the battle sword sect in the darkness of this space. Qin and Qin Wenyan chose to save Fan Miaoyu but didn't save Sun Qing, causing Qin to be killed by Zai Qiu out of hatred. Qin had already died, and the battle sword faction had no way to seek revenge. Zai Qiu's surname was the surname of the sacred emperor. His status wasn't merely a disciple of the core faction of the royal sacred sect, He was also a direct descendant of the sacred emperor. Anyone with the surname Zai would have an extremely high status in the royal sacred sect, possessing many special privileges. If it wasn't for his surname being Zai, how would Zai Qiu dare to be so impudent, acting first and reporting later? Because he knew that no one could touch him, not even the battle sword faction. Unless his battle sword faction was willing to bet the fate of the entire battle sword faction on the life of Zai Qiu. Not far away from the sacred royal city, Qin Wenyin was riding on a flying sword. The sword qi beneath his feet hummed, taking the form of a sword. His white robes fluttered in the wind as he stood with his hands clasped behind his back. That handsome face of his, as well as his spirited eyes, all exuded a carefree aura. After this trip, his combat prowess had already broken through to the peak of Heavenly Dipper. Once upon a time, the Heavenly Dipper realm was an unreachable existence to him. But now, he was about to break through to celestial phenomenon. The years of cultivation felt like a dream to him. The majestic and imposing ancient city appeared before his eyes. Qin Wentian's eyes flashed before a radiant smile appeared on his face. Staring at the beautiful silhouette atop the ancient city walls, Qin Wenyan felt warmth in his heart. His heart was set on returning to Qin Wenyan, but wasn't Qingqing missing him as well? She was actually waiting outside the city for his return. Qingqing. The speed of the sword beneath Qin Wentian's feet grew even faster. He transformed into a beam of light as he descended from the air, instantly appearing in the airspace above the city walls. He stood before Qingqing as a gentle smile could be seen in his eyes. Wentian. Mo Qingqing stepped out, instantly traversing the distance between them as she appeared beside Qin Wenyan. She held onto Qin Wentian's hands as she rested her head on Qin Wentian's chest. After which, an intoxicating smile blossomed in her eyes. I'm back. Qin Wenyan gently smiled as he tightly held onto Mo Qingqing's hands. This parting had lasted for over half a year, and the two of them were always apart. This caused Qin Wenyan to feel guilt in his heart. Mo Qingqing nodded her head. Let's return to the royal sacred sect first. Qin Wenyan smiled. However, when he saw Mo Qingqing's countenance changing, he couldn't help but to ask, what's wrong? Wenyan, can you accompany me to the Medicine Sovereign Valley? Mo Qingqing's eyes were like water as she stared at Qin Wenyan with a hint of hope in her eyes. Qingqing, what happened exactly? A sense of unease appeared in Qin Wentian's heart. Only to see Mo Qingqing lowering her head as she replied, Qin died. He was killed by Zai Qiu and the others from the royal sacred sect. I heard that both you and Qin offended Zai Qiu. Qin, he's dead? Qin Wenyan only felt his heart twitching violently as his countenance paled. Killed by Zai Qiu in the royal sacred sect? Although Qin Wenyan didn't interact much with Qin Wenyan was extremely fond of Qin's personality. Qin was upright, carefree, and uninhibited. He thought that in the future, they would definitely become very good friends. This time around, after returning to the royal sacred sect, he still planned to drink a few cups of wine with Qin. However, Mo Qingqing told him that Qin had died. He died in the hands of Zai Qiu. The joy he felt from returning instantly vanished without a trace. What remained was only a bellyful of anger, as well as the coldness in his heart. Qingqing, tell me what happened exactly. Qin Wenyan felt a dull pain in his heart. Although his cultivation base was nearing the celestial phenomenon realm, and his state of heart was incomparably tough, he still had no way to calmly watch the people around him die. He couldn't be as calm as still water, he couldn't be as cold and emotionless as before. Mo Qingqing told everything she knew to Qin Wenyan, even replicating the words of the old man from the battle sword sect. Qin Wenyan clenched his fists tightly after he heard it, as though a blazing flame was burning in his chest. His surname was Zai, the surname of the sacred emperor. So tyrannical, disregarding everything? His surname was Zai, publicly killing a heaven chosen from the battle sword sect? Yet this was a baseless accusation? His surname was Zai, so just because he and Qin chose to save Fan Miaoyu instead of Sun Qing, they wanted to kill him and Qin? His relationship with Fan Miaoyu was closer. In that moment of crisis, he would naturally save her. Yet Sun Qing's death was blamed on him and Qin? How preposterous! Qin Wenin was so angered that his body trembled uncontrollably as a cold killing intent gushed forth uncontrollably from him. After killing Qin, the next target would be him, Qin Wenian? Qingqing, let's return to the royal sacred sect. Qin Wenian spoke, his words causing Mo Qingqing's countenance to stiffen. Qin Wenian then continued, I'm afraid we're already being targeted. In such a situation, if he wanted to kill me, wouldn't it be easier for him to do so on our way back? We might as well head back to the royal sacred sect openly. Mo Qingqing nodded her head, but she was still worried. The two of them turned and soared into the air, only to see Mo Qingqing tightly holding onto Qin Wentian's hand, as though she was afraid of losing him. This scene caused the spectators from afar to feel incomparably envious. What a match made in heaven. At this moment, they still had no idea of the storm Qin Wenian was facing. On the way back to the royal sacred sect, there were people following them in the dark, yet none of them acted. In the royal sacred sect, the location of the battle sword faction. The news of Qin Wentian's return instantly caused a huge commotion. This had nothing to do with Qin Wentian's status. It was because of Qin's death, causing Qin Wentian's identity to be too sensitive. Countless eyes were staring at him, wanting to see what Zai Qiu would do next. Would he accuse Qin Wenian of the same crime as Qin and kill him on the spot? You shouldn't have returned. A voice drifted into Qin Wentian's ears. Qin Wenian could tell that the voice belonged to the battle sword faction's ancestor. As the sound of this voice faded, a group of silhouettes soared over from afar. These were none other than those from the core faction of the royal sacred sect. Qin Wentian. In the air, the person in the lead was none other than Xia Sheng. He stared at Qin Wentian as he spoke. Back then in the secret realm, you disobeyed orders and caused Sun Qing's death. After that, you even trapped a disciple of the royal sacred sect in danger. I order you to come here to lead the core faction and apologize to junior apprentice Sister Shang. No one is allowed to protect Qin Wenian. If you flee out of fear, kill without mercy. After speaking, Xia Sheng led his people away, leaving behind this sentence. Those from the battle sword faction all inclined their heads as a cold light flickered in their eyes. What a good Zai Qiu. He didn't find any other reasons, nor did he act sneakily. Instead, he acted the same way he dealt with Qin, accusing Qin Wentian of the crime and killing him. If Qin Wentian fled, it would mean that he fled out of fear and would be killed without mercy. This was the most direct method. Killing Qin was the same as killing him. In that case, Qin Wentian naturally had to be killed as well. Using the same baseless crime, who could say anything? As for leaving now, most probably from the moment Qin Wentian stepped into the sacred royal city, it would be extremely difficult for him to leave. Chapter 644. What should they do? At this moment, the battle sword faction was strangely silent. Many gazes were staring at Qin Wenian as expressions of reluctance flickered in their eyes. Should they just give up like this? Should they just watch as Qin Wenian sends himself to death? Qin had already died, and now they were going to lose Qin Wenian, who was a heaven chosen of the royal sacred region? It was impossible for them to rebel. Their faction was still far from having the strength to contend against the core faction of the royal sacred sect. In addition, if the core faction wanted to destroy them, they didn't even need to act personally. They only needed to send the other factions to suppress them. Since they couldn't rebel, Zai Qiu had framed Qin Wenian with a groundless crime. Just like Qin, there was no way for him to defend himself. Also, the core faction had silently approved of Zai Qiu's actions. Everyone was very clear what this meant. They were allowing Qin Wentian to do whatever he wanted. Let's go look for the old sect leader of the battle sword sect. I have something to say to him. Mo Qingqing's beautiful eyes flashed with determination. She pulled Qin Wentian's hand and walked forward, causing Qin Wentian to stare at her in bewilderment. At this moment, the eyes of this maiden before him were filled with determination. Maybe, Only for the person she loved the most would she have such a side to her. Her eyes were filled with determination, bravery, and she was willing to disregard everything. When Qin Wendian looked at Mo Qingqing, it was as though all the dark clouds in his heart had dissipated. A smile as gentle as water could be seen in his eyes. The two of them held each other's hands tightly as they arrived at the location where the old man from the Battle Sword sect was at. Did the core faction of the Royal Sacred Sect invite you before? Did you reject them? The old man directly asked when he saw Qin Wendian and Mo Qingqing walking over. Yes, that expert surnamed Ji invited me to join the core faction. Qin Wendian nodded. The countenance of the old man turned cold. No wonder the core faction silently approved of Zai Qiu's actions. Senior, the Royal Sacred Sect killed Qin and wanted to deal with Qin Wendian. If I can overturn the second crime, would there be any use? Mo Qingqing asked. The eyes of the old man flashed. He stared at Mo Qingqing. Are you referring to soul searching? It's impossible for them to allow us to search the souls of disciples from the Grand Shang Empire. Soul searching is a form of punishment. There's no need to search her soul. I can concoct a type of medicinal pill that would allow her to reveal the truth. In addition, there wouldn't be any side effects. Mo Qingqing spoke. Are you sure? The old man's eyes flashed with sharpness. Mo Qingqing nodded. If you can really make her speak the truth, then Qin's death would be considered a wrongful death. If they use this as a reason to kill Qin Wendian, the crime would no longer be established. Unless Zai Qiu stubbornly insists on killing Qin Wendian based on the first crime. If he really doesn't care about his reputation being tarnished, there would still be no solution, the old man said. In that case, let's blow this matter up and let everyone in the world know about it. Leave this matter to me, it wouldn't be good for the Battle Sword faction to step in. Mo Qingqing spoke. She knew that although the Battle Sword sect hated Qin Wendian, they had no way to break out of this situation. They were also in agony and sullen, but sadly, their strength was inferior to Qin Wendian's. Right. The old man cast a deep glance at Mo Qingqing before he smiled at Qin Wendian. You bastard, you are truly a blessed man. Regardless of the young woman in front of him or that last Qin, both of them were equally lovable. Today, Qin Wendian and the old man chatted for a long time. On the second day, the ancient sacred royal city was in an uproar. All the ins and ins in the city were discussing a single matter. Zai Qiu, the direct descendant of the core faction of the Royal Sacred Sect, was extremely cruel and merciless. For his own selfish reasons, he killed Qin, a heaven's chosen of the Battle Sword faction. And now, his long saber was placed on Qin Wendian's neck, wanting to kill this supreme heaven chosen of the Royal Sacred region. For a period of time, the entire sacred royal city was in an uproar. Everyone on the streets and alleys were discussing this matter. What sort of character was Qin Wendian? After the immortal martial realm as well as the battle on the sacred battle platform, there were only a handful of people in the sacred royal city who hadn't heard of his name. And just when everyone thought that this supreme heaven chosen would bring along an incomparably dazzling radiance to join the royal sacred sect, such a heaven-shaking news was released. How could the hearts of the people not tremble? Not only that, there was also the insider news that caused the hearts of many to tremble. It was rumored that Zai Qiu was a direct descendant of the sacred emperor, the true controller of the royal sacred sect. The reason why he killed Qin and Qin Wendian was because after the sacred battle platform, the royal sacred sect had invited the geniuses of the various powers to a secret realm. Within the secret realm, because Fan Miaoyu and one of Zai Qiu's junior apprentice brothers, Sun Qing, were in danger, Qin and Qin Wendian chose to save Fan Miaoyu instead of Sun Qing. The second reason was that Zai Qiu accused Qin and Qin Wendian of causing danger to a disciple of the royal sacred sect, and the witness was a female from the Grand Shang faction. However, who didn't know of the grudge between Qin Wendian and the Grand Shang faction? How credible was this evidence? What was even more shocking was that there was an insider news circulating in the sacred royal city. Zai Qiu's real motive for killing Qin Wendian was the command of the upper echelons of the royal sacred sect. This was because Qin Wenyin was from the Battle Sword sect and was highly regarded by the Battle Sword faction. However, the core faction actually invited Qin Wenyin to join them. Qin Wenyin felt the Battle Sword sect's courtesy and rejected the invitation. Hence, he was hated by the core faction. The core faction of the Royal Sacred Sect, the hegemon of the Royal Sacred Region, actually didn't have the magnanimity to tolerate others. They wanted to be ruthless and tyrannical, wantonly slaughtering the members of the other factions in their sect. Such news was extremely explosive, the speed at which it circulated was extremely fast. There was basically no way to stop it. Not only that, this news was also rapidly spreading to the outside of the sacred royal city. The hearts of the people in the royal sacred region were filled with panic. Many geniuses felt a wave of sorrow in their hearts. The hegemon of the royal sacred region for countless years, the royal sacred sect, was actually acting tyrannically now. Those who submit to them will prosper, those who oppose them will die. If the rumors were true, the royal sacred sect was truly too disappointing. In the future, would they still dare to join the royal sacred sect? One must know that the Battle Sword faction was also a subordinate power of the royal sacred sect. They didn't even want to spare geniuses like Qin and Qin Wenyin. Many felt injustice for Qin, but they also felt sorrow for Qin Wenyin, hoping that he would be able to escape this calamity. On the third day, another shocking piece of news circulated out. Qin Wenyin had severed all ties with the royal sacred sect, officially announcing that he would leave the Battle Sword sect. In this case, he was no longer a disciple of the Battle Sword sect, and no longer belonged to the Battle Sword faction. He had no more ties with the Royal Sacred Sect, and was no longer a subordinate power of the Royal Sacred Sect. This news once again caused the hearts of everyone to tremble. This Qin Wenyin was truly resolute, decisively severing all ties with the Royal Sacred Sect. Since you are so heartless, why should I still look up to you? As for leaving the Battle Sword sect, the crowd guessed that there was another meaning behind it. In the future, if an intense conflict erupted between Qin Wenyin and the Royal Sacred Sect, it would have nothing to do with the Battle Sword sect. Nobody knew if this was suggested by the Battle Sword sect or by Qin Wenyin. But in truth, this was the result of a long discussion between the old man and Qin Wenyin. This wasn't the end yet. Not long after Qin Wenyin announced that he would leave the Battle Sword sect, there was news that Zai Qiu of the Royal Sacred Sect wanted to head to the Battle Sword faction to capture Qin Wenyin, wanting to directly control Qin Wenyin. In the end, he was obstructed, and the person who obstructed him wasn't a disciple of the Battle Sword faction, but was instead someone from the Medicine Sovereign Valley. There were 7 doyens under the Medicine Sovereign from the Medicine Sovereign Valley who personally came to announce the engagement between Qin Wenyin and the Holy Maiden Mo Qingqing. If the Royal Sacred Sect didn't give an explanation and dared to capture Qin Wenyin, the Medicine Sovereign Valley would use all their strength to obstruct them. Not only that, they would also sever all ties with the Royal Sacred Sect for medicinal pills. The continuous unforeseen events caused the entire sacred royal city to tremble. During these few days, news regarding the Royal Sacred Sect, the Medicine Sovereign Valley, and Qin Wenyin filled the entire sacred royal city. The majority of the topics of discussion were all related to this matter. The unyielding attitude of the Medicine Sovereign Valley caused everyone to sigh in admiration. Even at this moment, they still had such resolution. Clearly, they didn't want to give the Royal Sacred Sect any face. However, everyone was also sighing in admiration at the relationship between the Holy Maiden Mo Qingqing and Qin Wenyin. At this moment, the two of them were actually engaged. Such an attitude from the Medicine Sovereign Valley naturally had something to do with Mo Qingqing. Such a relationship of life and death where they could only depend on each other became a legendary story, causing everyone to sigh in admiration that the two of them were simply a match made in heaven, an immortal couple. Countless young lovers were filled with envy, using the two of them as role models. This matter had yet to be settled. The human emperor of Yi Qingyun, actually doubted the Royal Sacred Sect's reasoning for convicting his foster son, Qin Wenyin. This caused everyone to sigh in admiration that Yi Qingyun was truly a man of emotions. It was rumored that back then Qin Wenyin and Mo Qingqing had helped him, hence he accepted Qin Wenyan as his foster son. Now that Qin Wenyan was in dire straits, he actually stood up for him. As expected of a human emperor of a generation. The public opinion of the royal sacred sect blotted out the skies and covered the earth, and the majority of it was filled with questions and curses. For a period of time, the hegemon of the royal sacred sect was under immense pressure. Zai Qiu felt as though he was suffocating. He didn't expect the commotion to be so great. A single Qin Wenyan actually caused such a commotion, causing the entire royal sacred region to be in an uproar. Although Qin Wenyan was a supreme heaven chosen, his influence wasn't that exaggerated. It was only because the insider news was too shocking that the royal sacred sect, the sacred ground in the hearts of everyone in the royal sacred region, was implicated. This caused the attention of everyone in the world, and in addition to the involvement of the Medicine Sovereign Valley, this caused the entire royal sacred region to explode. The royal sacred sect was a place where geniuses of the royal sacred region gathered. If this was really the case, where would the geniuses of the royal sacred region go to in the future? Was there still a need for them to join the royal sacred sect? Wouldn't they also become the vassals of the Zai faction? Those who submit will prosper, those who defy will die. Finally, Qin Wenyan sent out a piece of news. Since Zai Qiu wanted to convict him, he would meet Zai Qiu a day later and head to the royal sacred region to confront Zai Qiu. This news caused the hearts of many to be stirred. Would Zai Qiu really compromise because of the commotion caused by the public opinion? The royal sacred sect was the ruler of an entire region and had the strength to suppress the entire world. Would they disregard everything and directly kill Qin Wenyan? Countless gazes in the sacred royal city were staring at the royal sacred sect, wanting to see the ending of this matter. Chapter 645. The upper echelons of the royal sacred sect were also alerted. As experts of the royal sacred sect, they didn't pay attention to the internal affairs of the sect every day. In truth, not many people knew of Zai Qiu's actions. If back then Zai Qiu had reported to the royal sacred sect before acting against Qin Wenyan and Qin, his elders might not have agreed to him using such a drastic method. Zai Qiu also knew this point, hence he chose to act first and report later, using the most direct and violent method to kill Qin, causing the situation to be irreversible. At this moment, only now did Zai Qiu's actions were known by others. Zai Qiu was summoned by that expert surnamed Li for a chat. Since things had already been done, how could that expert surnamed Li admit that Zai Qiu had wrongly killed Qin and hand him over? In addition to the fact that Qin Wenyan had once rejected him, he allowed Zai Qiu to handle this matter. Since that expert surnamed Li had already made his decision, the others who knew of this naturally wouldn't interfere. However, nobody would have thought that there would actually be someone who would dare to create such a huge commotion, to the extent where everyone in the world knew of it. Evidently, this was done by someone from the Medicine Sovereign Valley. The Medicine Sovereign Valley truly had the guts to do so. They were already standing in opposition to the royal sacred sect. Right now, the upper echelons of the royal sacred sect were all alerted, summoning Zai Qiu several times for a chat, causing Zai Qiu to feel extremely pressured. The royal sacred sect ruled the world, relying on their strength to suppress the world. Everyone in the world worshipped them as a sacred ground, with countless geniuses entering it. But if the rumors were true that the royal sacred sect had wrongly killed Qin and Qin Wenyan, that would be a huge scandal. Although nobody could do anything to them, they couldn't help but to consider the repercussions of this matter. Finally, the upper echelons of the royal sacred sect came to an agreement. Their punishment for Qin Wenyan was death. But the prerequisite was that they had to prove Qin Wentian's crimes. Qin Wenyan and Qin caused a disciple of the royal sacred sect to fall into a dangerous situation, resisting the orders of the royal sacred sect. No matter what Qin Wenyan was, no matter what talent he had, they had to kill him without mercy. This was how the royal sacred sect should be. This was the consensus of the core faction of the royal sacred sect. This caused Zai Qiu, who was under immense pressure, to finally heave a sigh of relief. During these few days, he was almost suffocated. Luckily, since the core faction had made their decision, they could finally kill Qin Wenyan openly and honorably, taking revenge for his junior brother Sun Qing. Today, at the place where Qin died, Sun Qing, Xia Sheng and the others gathered. There weren't many of them, and only a few celestial phenomenon ascendants could be seen. However, it was unknown how many experts there were in the surroundings of this space. Not far away in the air, a group of silhouettes could be seen walking over. Indeed, there weren't any members of the Battle Sword faction, not a single one at all. It was as though the Battle Sword faction had completely separated themselves from this matter, not participating at all. Other than Qin Wenyan and Mo Qingqing, the others were all from the Medicine Sovereign Valley. Qin Wenyan, do you know your crimes? Zai Qiu stared at Qin Wenyan as he icily spoke. What crimes? Qin Wenyan landed on the ground as he stared at Zai Qiu. His ice-cold eyes flickered with a terrifying light, as though it contained an intense killing intent. Qin was killed unjustly by Zai Qiu. Before we entered the secret realm, did Senior Ji say that once we entered, we have to listen to Senior Xia Sheng's commands? If there's no Senior Xia Sheng, we have to listen to my commands. Zai Qiu icily asked. Yes. Qin Wenyan nodded. I told you to save Sun Qing, yet you disobeyed my orders and refused to admit your crimes? Zai Qiu asked. Think carefully about the situation back then. You only shouted a single sentence to Qin, Qin, save Sun Qing. You didn't give me any orders, and in that moment of crisis, my actions were all instincts. Zai Qiu, you wanted to kill me, yet you are lying with your eyes wide open. Why don't you just act directly? You can even slander me by saying that I wanted to kill you. Qin Wenyan coldly spoke, his words causing Zai Qiu to stiffen. He could faintly remember that at that time he indeed only shouted a single sentence to Qin, telling him to save Sun Qing and not Qin Wenyan. In that case, Qin Wenyan couldn't be considered to have disobeyed his orders. However, the second crime was sufficient to kill Qin Wenyan and Qin. What a glib tongue. In that case, you and Qin lured the person in the tomb to Junior Sister Shang, trapping the disciples of my royal sacred sect. Junior Sister Shang is right here, what else do you have to say? Zai Qiu coldly spoke. Is that so? Is what she said true? If she says that the deaths of those who died in the secret realm were all caused by me, wouldn't that be easier? Qin Wenyan faintly spoke. After which, he turned his cold gaze onto the female surnamed Shang as he coldly spoke. Shang Li, you framed Fan Miaoyu and now you are trying to frame me and Qin. You have to be responsible for Qin's death as well. Impudent. A cold voice rang out, only to see an expert beside Zai Qiu coldly speaking. Qin Wenyan, your actions are too despicable. Now, you actually still dare to slander Shang Li? If you want to say that you didn't do it, you can come over here. I naturally have a way to make you speak the truth. If I wrongly accused you, my royal sacred sect will definitely give you an explanation. Qin Wenyan abruptly laughed when he heard the righteous words of the other party. Arrogance was written all over his face as he continued, what a great joke. If I was controlled by you, given the status of the hegemon of the royal sacred sect, wouldn't it be extremely easy for you to trap me in an illusion? But this time around, before the truth could be ascertained, Qin was already killed by Zai Qiu and the others. Yet, Zai Qiu is still standing here in perfect condition, accusing me of my crime. And now you say that you will give me an explanation? What a joke. Let me ask you all, why was Fan Miaoyu brought away? How would I know about Fan Miaoyu's matter? That person coldly snorted. If you refuse to admit it even if you die, there's nothing we can do. But today, you have to stay behind no matter what. We will deal with you after the truth is ascertained. Ridiculous to the extreme. At this moment, a voice rang out. After which, Mo Qingqing slowly walked forward with a medicinal pill in her hands. She stared at the experts of the royal sacred sect as she spoke. There's no need to wait for the truth to be ascertained. This medicinal pill is none other than the bewildering pill. For those who consume it, within the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, they will answer truthfully no matter what you ask them. As long as you feed this pill to Shang Li, the truth will be revealed. Do you all dare? Cold light flashed in Emo Qingqing's eyes, causing the hearts of the experts of the royal sacred sect to tremble. That beautiful eyes of hers actually gleamed with a sharpness akin to the edge of a blade, staring straight at them with no fear at all. What a joke! Who knows what the true effect of this pill is? If you guys tampered with it, wouldn't Shangli say whatever you want her to say? Zai Qiu coldly spoke. Zai Qiu, why is there such a stupid member of the clan? Emo Qingqing stared at Zai Qiu, her cold voice causing Zai Qiu's countenance to instantly turn incomparably unsightly to behold as killing intent gushed forth from him. After she consumes the pill, there's no need for us to question her. Isn't it enough for you guys to question her? If you still suspect that there's a problem with the pill, the royal sacred sect is the hegemon of this world and they have many powerful alchemists. It's extremely easy for them to take the pill and appraise it. If there's a problem with the pill, I, Emo Qingqing, can use my life to pay for it. Emo Qingqing's voice was filled with determination as she continued. If the royal sacred sect doesn't wish for Shangli to consume the pill, there's no need for you guys to waste any more time talking nonsense. If you want to kill her, just do it. There's no need for you guys to make things worse. The royal sacred sect is truly a laughing stock. As the sound of her voice faded, the entire space fell silent. Emo Qingqing's words were irrefutable. If she suspected that there was a problem with the pill, she would use her life to pay for it. Not only that, the royal sacred sect did indeed have powerful alchemists. Too impudent. When did the matters of my royal sacred sect become something that a lass like you can interfere in? What a joke! An old man berated, his words causing the entire space to tremble. A stifling pressure gushed forth, enveloping Emo Qingqing. Under this terrifying pressure, Emo Qingqing found it hard to even breathe. Qin Wenyan stepped out, standing shoulder to shoulder with Emo Qingqing. At this moment, Emo Qingqing's countenance was filled with determination. There was no fear in her eyes. Her back was still straight as she stared at the old man. In this vast world, the royal sacred region governs the 9 great sects, Grand Shang and Grand Zhou, gathering all the heroes of the world here. Although they didn't truly govern the world, in truth, they have already grasped the authority of the world. If they want to kill someone, no one can stop them. Today, with just a single command, they would be able to cause our blood to splatter 5 steps away from them, announcing this to the world. After that, they would use iron-blooded methods to suppress those who dare to criticize the royal sacred sect. All these, the royal sacred sect has already accomplished. This is why Zai Qiu is so arrogant. It's just that the royal sacred sect has today's prosperity, ruling over an entire region for countless years, being revered as a sacred ground by the entire world. What did they depend on to suppress the entire world? Generation after generation of geniuses came here to join the royal sacred sect. What you guys did today might not be sufficient to shake the foundation of the royal sacred sect, but if the entire world is divided 10 years later, 100 years later, or even 1,000 years later, I wonder if the royal sacred sect would still be able to stand tall, unshakable. Emo Qingqing's voice rang out, her long black hair fluttered in the wind. A single sentence from her actually caused the experts of the royal sacred sect to be dumbfounded. They stared dumbfoundedly at the supreme beauty before them. It was very hard to imagine that Emo Qingqing would actually be able to say such words. Well said, as expected of the disciple of this seat. The bewilderment pill was concocted by this seat, who in the entire royal sacred region would dare to doubt it? If you guys don't dare to let that maiden consume it, in that case, don't even think of saying that you are guilty. Qin Wenyan is already engaged to my disciple, Emo Qingqing. If the royal sacred sect dares to kill him, this seat's temper wouldn't be so good either. An ethereal voice drifted over from the sky, unfathomable and untraceable. Within the royal sacred sect, numerous tyrannical auras soared up into the skies, wanting to find the location of the person who spoke. Since everyone has already arrived at my royal sacred sect, why is there still a need to hide? A voice rang out from within the royal sacred sect. As the sound of his voice faded, the silhouettes of 2 old men appeared not far away from Emo Qingqing. They were none other than the two old men who had appeared outside the immortal martial realm back then. Other than them, there was another group of silhouettes walking over from another direction. These people were all clad in white, exuding an aura that caused the gazes of many to freeze. These people were actually envoys of the immortal martial realm. Qin Wenin, if the royal sacred sect doesn't welcome you, the great gates of the immortal martial realm are still wide open for you. One of the envoys from the immortal martial realm spoke. Qin Wenin stared at that person. It was actually none other than the realm lord of the immortal martial realm, Wu Mu. Chapter 646. The recruitment of the immortal martial realm wasn't a secret to the royal sacred sect. The upper echelons of the royal sacred sect all knew about it, and even their sect leader had tacitly acknowledged the existence of the immortal martial realm. However, today, the immortal martial realm actually came to the royal sacred sect and issued an invitation to the person they wanted to deal with, Qin Wenin. This undoubtedly caused the royal sacred sect to be in an extremely difficult position. Numerous silhouettes descended, all of them were experts of the royal sacred sect. The aura radiating from them was extremely terrifying, causing people to feel a sense of stifling pressure. Since when did the matters of my royal sacred sect need to trouble you guys to interfere? A figure walked out. It was none other than the expert surnamed Li. His eyes were sharp as he swept his gaze over the crowd. He didn't expect that there would be so many experts appearing at his royal sacred sect today. Matters of your royal sacred sect? Qin Wenin has already withdrawn from the battle sword sect. He has no connection with the royal sacred sect. Not only that, he is now the son-in-law of the medicine sovereign Valley. You guys pinned a groundless crime on him and even threatened to kill him. Do you think I should interfere? The medicine sovereign's beard fluttered in the wind as he stared at the expert surnamed Li. As long as Qin Wenin nods his head, this matter would no longer be a matter of your royal sacred sect but a matter of my immortal martial realm instead. Wu Mu laughed. His meaning was clear without words. As long as Qin Wenin nods his head, he would be someone of the immortal martial realm, and the immortal martial realm would directly interfere in this matter. At that time, even the royal sacred sect wouldn't be able to hold him back. Don't agree to this fellow first. He wants to profit from our misfortune? Ridiculous. The medicine sovereign transmitted his voice to Qin Wenin, his words causing Qin Wenin to be taken aback. Looking at the medicine sovereign's attitude, he seemed to be extremely confident. The most mysterious expert in the royal sacred region, the medicine sovereign from the medicine sovereign valley, the #1 alchemist in the royal sacred region, most probably had a secret that no one knew of. It was rumored that the medicine sovereign had lived for countless years, and every time he was about to die of old age, he would suddenly come back to life. What do you guys want? That expert surnamed Li coldly asked. Such a thing had never happened before in his royal sacred sect. Killing a junior at the Heavenly Dipper realm actually caused such a huge commotion. Not only did the entire world know about it, the medicine sovereign and experts from the immortal martial realm came to protect him. What does your royal sacred sect want? The medicine sovereign blew on his beard as he coldly spoke. Elder Li's expression flickered with uncertainty. Today's events had already exceeded the scope of his control. It was likely that even he wouldn't be able to do anything about it. To him, the medicine sovereign was a senior. When he was very young, the medicine sovereign was already the medicine sovereign. As for the immortal martial realm, Qin Wenin faintly knew that this was also a terrifying power that came to the royal sacred region to plunder demon-level geniuses once every 10 years. Because the number of people they wanted wasn't too many, and it was all voluntary, the royal sacred sect had never interfered. But the true reason was most probably the power behind the immortal martial realm. The royal sacred sect didn't dare to act recklessly. Old fellow, how many years has it been? Your temper is still the same. At this moment, a transcendent aura drifted over from the depths of the royal sacred sect. At this instant, the entire royal sacred sect fell into silence. Everyone stared in that direction as a hint of worship could be seen in their eyes. The sect leader of the royal sacred sect? Qin Wenin inclined his head and stared at the horizons. That aura was calm and tranquil, as though it had already transcended the mortal world. Even the sect leader referred to the medicine sovereign as an old fellow. How old is this medicine sovereign exactly? Many people sighed in their hearts. Don't be frightened. Maybe it's just a strand of immortal sense. His true self isn't even in the royal sacred sect. The voice of the medicine sovereign rang out in Qin Wentian's mind once more, causing Qin Wentian to be stunned. What sort of character was the sect leader of the royal sacred sect? He was a legendary immortal. How could his true self stay in the sect every day? Maybe he wasn't even in the royal sacred region. Even your descendants dare to be so arrogant in front of me. The medicine sovereign spoke with a smile that was not a smile. Flaunting your seniority. That voice rang out again. After which, it turned to Wu Mu. Wu Mu, seems like you are the realm lord of the immortal martial realm this time around. Coming from my royal sacred region and having such accomplishments, you might even be able to reach my level in the future. Congratulations. Many thanks for senior's teachings. Wu Mu respectfully replied, bowing slightly in the direction of a junior. In front of the medicine sovereign, he was naturally a junior. Although Wu Mu was respectful, in his eyes he didn't have the same reverence as the others. Most probably, Wu Mu had met some immortals in the outside world before. There was no doubt that the power behind the immortal martial realm had immortals among them. Medicine sovereign, Wu Mu, the two of you don't need to mingle with these juniors. I can't be bothered with such matters. Let's just follow the rules of the royal sacred region. Celestial phenomenon ascendants are not allowed to interfere in the matters of juniors at the Heavenly Dipper realm. They can settle it themselves. Do you all hear me? That voice abruptly exuded a sense of imposingness, causing the hearts of everyone to tremble. As expected of the Sacred Emperor. To the Sacred Emperor, such matters were basically nothing. The Sacred Emperor was already an immortal, transcending this level. Even in the royal sacred sect, it has been a long time since he last appeared. Who would have thought that he would actually appear here today? Seems like the face of this medicine sovereign and Wu Mu was truly too great. Yes, Sacred Emperor. The experts of the royal sacred sect all bowed. Nobody dared to refute the words of the Sacred Emperor. This was the absolute faith of the royal sacred sect. His words were akin to a decree. Since celestial phenomenon ascendants didn't interfere, that meant that Zai Qiu, Xia Sheng and Qin Wenian could settle this themselves. A cold light flashed in Zai Qiu's eyes. He stared at Qin Wenin as though he was looking at a dead man. Since the Sacred Emperor has spoken, no one in the world would dare to disobey. Although this was already giving face to the medicine sovereign and the immortal martial realm, if celestial phenomenon ascendants didn't interfere, what could Qin Wenian use to fight against them? Although Qin Wenian was extremely famous in the royal sacred region, in terms of combat prowess, he alone didn't have to fear Qin Wenian in the slightest. He would settle it himself. There was no suspense in killing Qin Wenian. The Sacred Emperor is indeed the Sacred Emperor, transcending worldly affairs. His words clearly displayed his boldness, yet it wouldn't change the ending. Zai Qiu mused. Although his surname was Zai, he was a descendant of the Sacred Emperor who was separated by many generations. In fact, he had never even seen the Sacred Emperor himself before. The Sacred Emperor had long transcended the mortal world of the royal sacred region. When he was ruling over the world, he pursued the pinnacle of the martial Tao and had extremely strict requirements for his descendants. This was the reason why he was able to rule over the entire royal sacred region. Zai Qiu was a descendant of the Sacred Emperor. If he lost to Qin Wenian, it would be akin to throwing away the face of the Sacred Emperor. Even if he died in battle, the Sacred Emperor wouldn't feel the slightest bit of pity and would only think that he was useless. The medicine sovereign and the realm lord of the immortal martial realm furrowed their brows as they glanced at Qin Wenin. If neither of them interfered, although Qin Wentian's talent was outstanding, when compared to the peak-level Heavenly Dipper sovereigns of the royal sacred sect, his foundation was still a little lacking. Mo Qingqing held onto Qin Wentian's hand as she cast a worried glance at Qin Wenyan. The words of the sacred emperor seemed to be disadvantageous to Qin Wenyan. However, at this moment, Qin Wenyan turned his gaze towards the horizons as he calmly spoke. The sacred emperor commands the entire world. His words are the law. Since he wants us to settle this ourselves, Junior will naturally comply. In that case, today, there's no right or wrong, there's only gratitude and grudges. Right or wrong, it's in your heart. A calm voice drifted over. A single sentence of right or wrong, it's in your heart. Was Zaiqiu wrong? His junior apprentice brother Sun Qin died because Qin and Qin Wenyan didn't save him. Hence, he bore hatred in his heart, acting first and reporting later. In his heart, he was always right. Even if everyone said he was wrong, he would still feel that he was right. But to Qin Wenyan, why would he sacrifice Fan Miaoyu to save Sun Qin? There's no right or wrong, there's only gratitude and grudges. Qin Wenyan didn't look at Zaiqiu. His gaze was fixed on Shang Li, a disciple from the Grand Shang faction. She had to be responsible for Qin's death. Although I have grudges with the Grand Shang faction, Shang Tong tried to kill me back then and I killed him with my own strength. If you all hate me, you can kill me openly. However, from the moment I stepped into the royal sacred sect, you already wanted to humiliate me. In the secret realm, you led the danger to Fan Miaoyu and even slandered Qin and me, causing Qin to die. If you don't die, Qin won't be able to rest in peace. Qin Wenyan slowly walked out as a long halberd appeared in his hands. Wielding it diagonally, Qin Wenyan slowly walked towards Shang Li. At this moment, Shang Li stared at the cold eyes of Qin Wenyan as her heart involuntarily trembled. Among these people, the only one who had seen Qin Wentian's true strength was none other than her, Shang Li. She had personally witnessed the battle between Qin Wenyan and the buried immortal. Not only that, under the pursuit of the buried immortal, Qin Wenyan still managed to walk out of the immortal palace alive. Didn't you mock me before? In that case, scram the hell out. Qin Wenyan pointed his long halberd forward, displaying his sharpness. Shang Li felt a chill run down her spine. She glanced to her left and right only to see Zaiqiu staring at her as he spoke. Go on. Since he refuses to admit his guilt, our royal sacred sect won't use force to suppress him. Shang Li, go and kill him. Shang Li didn't tell Zaiqiu about the battle between Qin Wenyan and the buried immortal. She lied to Zaiqiu and the others, saying that Qin Wenyan and Qin had lured the buried immortal to her. Naturally, she would hide some things from them. No. Shang Li shook her head, her countenance incredibly ugly to behold. As the sound of her voice faded, numerous cold gazes landed on her. These were all experts from the royal sacred sect. Cowardice. As someone from their royal sacred sect, Shang Li actually cowered from battle when facing Qin Wenyan? Today, the sacred emperor was personally spectating the battle. Even if Shang Li had to die in battle, she couldn't be cowardly. Shang Li, an elder from the Grand Shang Empire, coldly spoke, causing Shang Li's countenance to turn even paler. Shang Li, Qin Wenyan called out. Shang Li stared into his eyes only to hear Qin Wenyan staring at her as he coldly spoke. For a despicable and useless character like you to continue living, it's only a humiliation. As the sound of his voice faded, Shang Li only saw Qin Wenyan rushing towards her as his long halberd pierced out. This halberd seemed to be able to penetrate through everything. Shang Li unleashed her aura, wanting to defend, yet she discovered that the long halberd had already pierced through her heart. She lowered her head, staring at the long halberd that had pierced through her heart as an expression of agony appeared on her face. A thunderous roar rang out. Shang Li only felt a terrifying pressure pressing down on her heart. Shang Li knelt down, her countenance like dead ashes. The hearts of the spectators all trembled when they saw the kneeling Shang Li. The true intent of Dreamscape, Shang Li had sunk into a dreamscape. There was no halberd piercing through her heart. Qin Wenyan was still standing at his original location, yet with a single shout, he wanted Shang Li to kneel. This scene caused the countenances of those from the royal sacred sect to turn incredibly ugly to behold. Even Zai Qiu had an expression of shame and anger on his face as he stared at Shang Li with killing intent in his eyes. Useless, truly useless. She was already cowering before the battle, her will wasn't firm enough, and she was invaded by Qin Wentian's true intent of dreamscape, unable to extricate herself. This time around, Qin Wentian really moved. Shang Li's heart pounded violently as a hint of clarity returned to her eyes. However, it was already too late. Qin Wentian's long halberd directly pierced through the center of her brows. Those from the royal sacred sect didn't interfere. Who would dare to defy the orders of the sacred emperor? Not only that, Shang Li's performance truly disappointed them. She was too useless. Chapter 647. Shang Li's strength shouldn't be so weak. No matter what, she was a peak-level Heavenly Dipper sovereign who had comprehended 3 types of true intents. There was no way she would be killed in a single strike. However, because Shang Li had witnessed the battle between Qin Wentian and the buried immortal, when Qin Wentian wanted to kill her, no one from the royal sacred sect tried to stop her, forcing her to fight. She didn't have any confidence in this battle. She knew she would definitely die if she fought. Under the fear of death, one's will would weaken, and it would be easy for others to invade her mind. At this moment, Qin Wentian used the true intent of dreams, directly dragging her into a dreamscape, killing her in a single strike. Shang Li's death didn't cause those from the royal sacred sect to realize Qin Wentian's strength. They only silently cursed Shang Li for throwing away the face of the royal sacred sect. The sacred emperor was personally spectating the battle, yet she first cowered and couldn't even withstand a single strike. She deserved to die. Trash. Zai Qiu coldly glanced at Shang Li. Shang Li was a heaven chosen from the Grand Shang faction and not from the core faction. As expected, she couldn't even withstand a single strike from Qin Wentian. How shameful. The countenances of those from the Grand Shang faction were all extremely unsightly. Shang Li's death actually had no sympathy or pity, only contempt and mockery. How lamentable. Qin Wentian turned and brandished his halberd as he walked towards the center of the crowd. He didn't say anything, but the killing intent radiating from him was more powerful than any words he could say. Fight. There was only one word written on Qin Wentian's entire body: fight. Qin, a heaven chosen from the battle sword faction, was extremely carefree and unrestrained. He was surrounded here and killed by the royal sacred sect. This debt of blood had to be repaid by someone. In addition, if it wasn't for the medicine sovereign and realm lord Wu Mu appearing today, the immortal sense of the sacred emperor of the royal sacred sect wouldn't have appeared at all. These experts from the royal sacred sect would have directly used their strength to bully Qin Wentian, just like how they dealt with Qin. They would directly kill him on the spot, not giving him any chance to escape. Dead men tell no tales. Whatever the royal sacred sect said would be the truth. There's no right or wrong, only grudges. Qin Wentian, the Saint Emperor is magnanimous and gave you a chance. However, you still have to die. There's no way you can survive. Zai Qiu stepped out. Since Qin was already dead, killing Qin Wentian could also be considered as revenge for Sun Qin. Let me kill him, Saint Xia said. I'll do it myself. Zai Qiu's voice was ice cold. His strength wasn't any weaker compared to Xia Sheng. After all, his surname was Zai, and the amount of cultivation resources he obtained from the royal sacred sect far surpassed Xia Sheng. There's no need to argue. Who are the ones who killed Qin? All of you can come at me together. Qin Wentian arrogantly spoke. As the sound of his voice faded, the entire space froze as everyone stared at Qin Wentian. Even the medicine sovereign, Mo Qingqing, and the others were all astonished. Didn't this guy know who he was facing? Xia Sheng and Zai Qiu were both supreme experts who had comprehended 4 types of true intents. In addition, they also had powerful bloodlines and extraordinary combat prowess. In the entire royal sacred region, it was extremely rare to find someone at the Heavenly Dipper realm who could defeat them. Qin Wentian actually said that he wanted his opponents to come at him together. Does he really think he is unrivaled in Heavenly Dipper? Many people coldly laughed in their hearts. Qin Wentian's talent was indeed strong. Could it be that because of his achievements, it caused him to not know the immensity of the heavens and earth? False reputation misleads people. I also participated in Qin's death. Killing you is already enough for me. Another person besides Zai Qiu spoke. This person had also entered the immortal palace before and was extremely powerful. Qin Wenin remembered that this person's control abilities were extremely strong and he had an ancient vine astral soul. In that case, all of you can scram out here together. Qin Wenin pointed his halberd at the three people in front of him. His voice was as arrogant as ever, unexcelled in the world. I've never seen such an arrogant and ignorant person before. You are the first, and you even dared to do so in my royal sacred sect. My horizons have truly been broadened. That person's gaze was as sharp as a blade as he stared at Qin Wenin. Since he wants to die faster, we shall grant him his wish. A malevolent smile flickered in Zai Qiu's eyes. Although he wanted to show off in front of the sacred emperor, since Qin Wenin wanted to die so badly, he could only do as he wished. You have to kill him in a single strike. I don't want to see such an arrogant and ignorant face ever again. Such an ignorant person actually managed to become famous throughout the royal sacred region and was almost recruited into the royal sacred sect. What a humiliation. Zai Qiu stepped out, with Xia Sheng and the other person on his left and right respectively. A terrifying aura gushed forth as the sound of whistling echoed in the air. The destructive might contained within was sufficient to bury Qin Wenin. On Qin Wentian's body, strands of green light flashed as though a green seed had been planted on his body. Rumble! The person beside Zai Qiu abruptly erupted with an incomparably intense green light. Instantly, an incomparably gigantic ancient vine manifested behind him. This was none other than his astral nova. The vine frenziedly extended outwards, blotting out the sky and directly enveloping the entire space. Boundless green light cascaded downwards, unceasingly landing on Qin Wentian's body. Numerous vines coiled around Qin Wentian, wanting to bind Qin Wentian. Not only that, there were even green needles piercing into Qin Wentian's body. A numbing sensation gushed forth, causing Qin Wentian's entire body to tremble. It was as though his entire body was being jolted by an electric current. What a powerful combination of astral souls. It's even more terrifying after transforming into true intense. Qin Wentian silently mused. Abruptly, numerous motes of light appeared around him. These motes of light shone on every part of his body, resembling astral light, yet it wasn't astral energy. It was as though he was clad in a layer of astral armor. This was a brand new type of energy that flickered in and out of existence, causing Qin Wentian's body to feel blurry and indistinct, as though he would disappear at any moment. Emichim? At this moment, that expert felt that the green needles had no way to pierce into Qin Wentian's body. The light spots around Qin Wentian seemed to be a type of mysterious energy that possessed an extremely strong defense. Not only that, it gave off a sense of violence, as though the moment it erupted, it would unleash a terrifying might. This type of energy was indeed a brand new type of energy. It was formed from the condensation of three different true intents, the true intent of demon, force, and dream. Qin Wentian named this energy as illusory demon force. Illusory represented dreams, demon corresponded to the true intent of demon, and force corresponded to the true intent of force. This brand new energy was something that Qin Wentian had comprehended from Di Tian's combat experience. It had many wondrous uses, and was one of the greatest harvests he obtained from this trip to the Immortal Palace. One of the uses of the illusory demon force was defense. Not only was it sturdy, it could also be both real and illusory at the same time. It had the effect of reducing the destructive power of the opponent's attacks. There were many extremely powerful experts in the surroundings. They naturally could tell how extraordinary this brand new energy was. It was formed from the true intents of mandates. However, when the true intents of mandates fused into a brand new energy, it was extremely hard to tell which true intents were fused together. Just like in the sword comprehension grass hut, The sword attacks of the grass hut were formed from the fusion of true intents. They were formless and formless, as though they had lost the characteristics of their original true intents. Even for the same two types of true intents, different people could fuse them together to form different types of energy. Qin Wentian's illusory demon force was formed from the insights Qin Wentian comprehended himself. There seems to be the true intent of dreams, as well as a surge of violent energy. It might be the fusion of the true intent of demons and dreams. An expert from the Royal Sacred Sect spoke, as though reminding Zai Qiu and the others to be careful. Once the true intents were fused into a brand new energy, the power unleashed would be multiplied. The reason why Xia Sheng was the leader of Heavenly Dipper Sovereigns in the Royal Sacred Sect was precisely because he had fused two types of true intents together. Qin Wenin advanced step by step as the power of his bloodline erupted forth. A demonic glow shone from him as the illusory demon force enveloped his body, making him seem like a descendant of a supreme demon king. A destructive might that could destroy everything erupted forth. Qi, Qi. Under the shocked gazes of the crowd, as Qin Wenin advanced step by step, the vines that were madly entangling him were instantly disintegrated into dust. They only saw a flash of light, as though this was the effect of a brand new energy, directly shattering the vines that were entangling him into dust. What energy is this? The hearts of the crowd pounded as they stared at the young man that exuded a demonic glow. Could it be that Qin Wenin wasn't ignorant and arrogant? Instead, he truly had unrivaled talent that could suppress all Heavenly Dipper Sovereigns? Such strong self-confidence naturally originated from his incomparably tyrannical strength. At this moment, the tyrannical aura radiating from Qin Wenin already caused Zai Qiu and the other two to feel an intense threat. The light that enveloped him was a kind of energy that could destroy everything. Humiliation? Qin Wenin stared at Zai Qiu and the other two as he icily spoke. Today, the three of you shall become the humiliation of the Royal Sacred Sect, nailed to the pillar of shame in the history of the Royal Sacred Sect. As the sound of his voice faded, he rushed out, transforming into an illusory beam of light. Zai Qiu and the other two could only see an illusory shadow, flickering in and out of existence. As for that expert who used the vines to bind Qin Wenin, he was currently in a miraculous state. There was only him and Qin Wenin. At the instant when Qin Wentian's halberd pierced towards him, it was as though only that halberd remained in this entire world. No. His body trembled. He discovered that no matter how he defended, it was all futile. This was a halberd technique that could destroy him in a single strike. Bang! While he was still immersed in the illusory state, the halberd had already landed on his body. In just an instant, his entire body turned into dust, disappearing from this world. A single strike, annihilated. Not only that, he vanished into thin air. Regardless of the true intent of demon or force, both were incomparably tyrannical energies that were famed for their attacks. How violent would the fusion of the three true intents be? At the instant the halberd landed, all the targets of the attack would be enveloped by the boundless illusory demon energy, turning into dust, just like that expert. This halberd strike directly shattered the confidence of the experts of the Royal Sacred Sect. They stared in shock at the vanishing silhouette, only to see Qin Wenin lifting his palms once more, launching another attack towards Zai Qiu. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.